The King's Avatar audiobook by Kevin chapter 521, where dreams start. Chen Guo didn't even want to eat after she heard what Ye Xiu had said. She quickly finished her dinner and went about learning the requirements for the qualification tournament. On the official website of the Glory Alliance, Chen Guo soon found a complete introduction and advertisements for the qualification tournament. As soon as she opened the site, she saw the slogan for the qualification tournament, "The place where dreams begin." Cheesy. Chen Guo thought to herself and hastily went digging for information. As she learned more and more, she found that it was exactly as Ye Xiu had described to her. The only difference was that the official publication had a more of an advertisement tone to it. It said that every participating team had a chance to fulfill their dreams. Teams with outstanding performances were said to be living their dreams. The pro teams that re-entered the alliance were said to have their dreams saved. But the most appealing ones were the players who were discovered through the qualification tournament and were selected by professional teams. For these people, the qualification tournament was truly what the slogan had promised, a place where dreams began. After Chen Guo read through everything, she became so excited and so eager that she wished that the qualification tournament would start tomorrow. They would first have a chance to fulfill their dreams and then live their dreams. Finally, the qualification tournament would save someone's dream, while the others would begin their dreams. How do we sign up? Chen Guo couldn't wait to find out. Then she found out that signing up was extremely simple. The sign-up page would open at the end of the season. All she needed to do was follow the instructions provided by the website. Why weren't the pro games over yet? Chen Guo immediately became anxious. She wanted to check the regular season's timetable. There were 8 games left in the regular season, which meant that there were still about 2 more months until the end of the season. Don't be so hasty. The later the competition, the better it will be for us. Ye Xiu was behind Chen Guo for a while. He saw she was checking this and that and guessed her thoughts. True. We still need a lot of preparations. At least you guys have to be max level first. Chen Guo said. Obviously, the other equipment will come along later on in the process. Ye Xiu said. Right now, you and Wei Chen are the only ones with silver weapons, so we are far behind on equipment. What if we meet God-level character fully armed with silver equipment? Chen Guo said. Ye Xiu's Lord Grimm had already fought against top players like Wang Jixi, Han Wenqing, and Huang Xiaoshan in the game, but he hadn't met any God-level character yet. The time when he had fought against Troubling Rain was in the fixed field. Why were God-level characters worshipped? There were 3 main reasons. First, the player had excellent skills that gained them fame through battle. Secondly, their skill points were high. The higher the skill points, the better the skill levels. It would enhance both attack damage and crowd control effects. The third was equipment. Equipment directly enhanced the character's stats. If characters like One Autumn Leaf, Troubling Rain, Vacaria, and Desert Dust were stripped of their equipment, they would be no different from any other max-level character in the game. Ye Xiu was trying to create a new team. From a player's aspect at least, they would have to have a top player like Ye Xiu. All the others could improve their level through practicing, but from the equipment aspect, they were far behind. Even though Ye Xiu and Wei Chen character had silver weapons, they couldn't compare to a character fully armed with silver equipment. The gap between 2 full set of equipment was obviously not the same with the differences between 2 pieces of equipment. As for skill points, that was something one cannot ask for. If one was extremely out of luck, one might still only have 4,000 points after playing for 10 years. There was nothing one could do about it, so Chen Guo did not even mention it. Yes, equipment is a huge problem. As you can see, there is a lot that we need to do this year. Winning the qualification tournament is only a small part of it, Ye Xiu said. We can work it out. Chen Guo said to Ye Xiu. She was also saying it to herself. We have to, Ye Xiu said. He returned to his seat and started working immediately. The second day, Chen Guo started rearranging the work schedule in the internet cafe to free Tang Ru from the front desk. She then posted an advertisement for employment and headed back to the reserved room. Her main task was still leveling with Ye Xiu. She wished she could be a pro player, but her age wouldn't allow her to. She was too late to be trained. She didn't possess Wei Chen's talent, nor his experience. Experience needed time to accumulate, that was for sure, but it didn't necessarily mean that with the accumulation of time one could definitely gain experience. The forming of experience needed studying, thinking, and processing. One had to actively work their brain to accumulate experience. That was the exact reason why many old gamers might be playing longer than new pro players, but were less experienced than pro players. Was it because pro players went through more battles? Of course not. The attitude was key. If the gamers played for fun, they were passively accumulating experience. What about professional players? They actively accumulated experiences, one battle, one game, one recording. They were constantly reflecting on these things. Therefore, even though Chen Guo had played Glory for many years and had a lot of experience, the experience was divided into levels as well, and her experience level was honestly quite low. She had to help everyone else in her own way under her circumstances. Ye Xiu was leveling in the game. Outside the game, he received a QQ message from Mo Qiang. "I'm here, what's up?" Ye Xiu replied to Mo Qiang. "I have two bad news, which one would you like to hear first?" Mo Qiang asked. "Just tell me. All your money is spent, but I don't have everything you want." Mo Qiang said. "What's missing?" "Aquamarine. It's not because there isn't enough money. I've asked everywhere and there is no stock of it anywhere. If there were, I would definitely have bought it for you," Mo Qiang said. "Well, thanks, it looks like I'll have to figure that one out on my own," Ye Xiu said. "I'll keep on the lookout for it as well," Mo Qiang said. "Okay, what about the others, do you have those?" Ye Xiu asked. "I got them, you can come over and grab them. Damn, I'm too afraid to even go out of the city with these precious materials. What if I were killed and lost them? That's 100,000 yuan right there. Even I want to hire a killer to kill myself just to get these materials." Mo Qiang said. "I got it. I'll come get it soon, but can you teleport somewhere close to where I am?" Ye Xiu replied. "Sure. Where are you? I'll head over," Mo Qiang said. In the heavenly domain, there were teleport portals between large cities. Otherwise, if gamers had to travel everywhere on foot in the vast lands of the heavenly domain, the Glory Game Company would have been bombed. In some level 55 bordering cities, there were as few people as the level 55 leveling area. Within the heavenly domain, except for a few level 55, 60, and 65 characters who were abandoned from the time when these levels were the level caps, most characters were level 70. Gamers were active mostly in the level 70 areas. The lower leveling areas were lonely and the cities seemed desolate. Arriving at the agreed place, Ye Xiu saw Mo Qiang's character. Its name was Run Cockroach. The class of the character had a dirty style. It was a thief. Seeing Ye Xiu's Lord Grim arrive, Mo Qiang clicked his tongue in wonder at his mix and matched equipment. He then traded every material he had bought. "How are you going to get your hands on the aquamarine?" Mo Qiang asked. "I'll go back to the normal server and ask around, see if I can steal a boss," Ye Xiu said. He used the word steal. In Glory, it was almost impossible to kill a map boss in Harmony. "Oh, the new server, your level shouldn't be too disgusting there, right?" Mo Qiang said. "Yes, but at your level that would really be disgusting," Ye Xiu said. "Ha ha ha ha, with this level I couldn't do it, even I hacked the system," Mo Qiang laughed. "Well, I've got to go. I'll talk to you if I need anything," Ye Xiu said. "Okay, come find me when you have big deals," Mo Qiang said. Of course, of course." Ye Xiu sent Mo Qiang's Run Cockroach away and saved the materials he had received. Even though the rare materials weren't complete, it could upgrade some forms of the 1000 Chance umbrella, but because he was in the heavenly domain, if he were to upgrade the 1,000-chance umbrella now, according to the irreversible rule, the 1,000-chance umbrella would not be able to return to the 10th server. Therefore Ye Xiu didn't do it at the moment. He notified Chen Guo and teleported Lord Grimm back to the 10th server. The 10th server. A normal system notification showed up. It would be common for anyone, but the 10th server exploded in an instant. FCK Lord Grimm, why is he back? Numerous guild leaders received this notification because they all had this top expert as a friend. The expert had gone to the heavenly domain, and none of them had deleted him. It was nice to keep him as a distant memory. In the end, it worked in an unexpected way. Last time Lord Grimm had returned, everyone was melancholy. They saw him break a few records and then leave. What did he want this time? The 10th server hadn't seen Lord Grimm for a long time. The guilds were finally developing in their expected direction. They had dungeon records under control. Players gradually realized the strength of the big guilds. Happy was popular in the beginning, but with Lord Grimm gone, there were no new records to excite the player, so right now it was out of the big guild's line of sight. But now, Lord Grimm returned. Did he want to break more records and leave? The 10th servers were finally forgetting about him. Why did he have to return at such times? Was it planned? The core members of the big guilds were coughing blood after they learned of this news. They really wanted to throw a protest in the streets. The King's Avatar, Volume 5, Ace Showdown, Chapter 522, Chapter 522. Managing the guild storage despite having added Lord Grimm as a friend. The only guild leader who dared to talk to him at this time was Blue River. "What are you doing back here again?" said Blue River, emphasizing the again. With Lord Grimm gone, his workload had been reduced by a lot. Competition with the other guilds was something he was used to no matter the situation, but against this god, he repeatedly suffered setback after setback to the point where he would cough up blood in helplessness. In Blue River's opinion, against such an opponent, if he could hide, it would be better to hide. This was a thought he had even before the guilds had allied together against Lord Grimm. "I'm here for a boss," Ye Xiu replied. "Which boss?" Blue River asked. "Topaz Knight. That's the name, right?" "The one that drops aquamarine," Ye Xiu said. "What are you going to kill him for?" Blue River continued to be astonished. "Didn't I already say it?" Ye Xiu said. "You want an aquamarine." "Yeah, does your guild have any of it?" "No," Blue River replied bluntly. "How many times have you guys hunted for the Topaz Knight? Which guilds have killed it?" asked Ye Xiu. "Why aren't you speaking?" "I'm not your spy," Blue River replied. "You've already told me about your guild's situation." "I'm asking about the other guilds," Ye Xiu said. "Of course I wouldn't know about the other guilds," Blue River replied. "Ha ha," Ye Xiu laughed. Blue River was depressed, but when he thought about it, the lies that he came up with could only fool noobs. Even if his side hadn't killed the boss, he should at least know something as simple as which other guilds had killed it. No. The Topaz Knight has been killed 3 times so far by Tyrannical Ambition, Herb Garden, and Excellent Dynasty, Blue River said. "How could your guild be so weak?" Ye Xiu commented. Blue River kept quiet. "Our guild killed most of the other bosses. Do you think I would tell you that?" Blue River thought. "Have you helped manage Happy recently?" Ye Xiu asked. "Once in a while." Blue River felt embarrassed talking about this. The guild leader ran over to the heavenly domain, but he was still managing Happy quite meticulously. But speaking of this opened up a new world for Blue River as a spy. He felt like spies didn't necessarily have to sell out information. They could also work on improving relationships between two sides and prosper together. This was also a good way of developing his guild. "How is Happy doing?" asked Ye Xiu. The question made Blue River feel somewhat confused. The leader of the guild was asking the spy how the guild was doing. What the FCK was this? Blue River really wanted to remind the other side that he was a spy. However, the phrase "I'm a spy" wasn't something he should be saying, yet it now turned into a phrase he could casually throw out. Blue River really didn't have the courage to say it. The guild is quite stable and it's growing quite well, Blue River said. It's about time to establish the storage system for the guild, no, Ye Xiu replied. Ah, Blue River was surprised again. Don't tell me that you thought that I wouldn't know about that, Ye Xiu asked. Blue River remained silent. He wouldn't dare to think that the god would not know such things. It was just that a person of importance often forgot many things, and he hoped that he wouldn't have remembered this. If we don't set up the storage system, the guild will disperse sooner or later, don't you think? Ye Xiu asked. Yes, Blue River replied reluctantly. Hey, does your storage house have any excess equipment? How lending us a few? Ye Xiu continued. No, Blue River rejected it firmly. Stingy, Ye Xiu replied. Go figure it out on your own, Blue River replied. At this stage of development for a guild, the guild storage system was very important. It directly affected the continuity of a guild's growth. For Happy, it was no longer a matter of growth, but rather, it was a matter of its survival. This guild was always a thorn in the side to the other club guilds. Using the guild storage system was a method that would allow them to eliminate Happy without bloodshed. A guild storage system was a system that helped to maintain the stability of a guild, as well as something that could show its strength. A guild storage has a much higher capacity than a personal storage, and its capacity would increase along with the guild's level. In a guild, the guild leader possessed the highest authority over the guild's storage, which meant that a guild storage was no different from the guild leader's personal storage. But just having a large storage was nothing to be impressed by. The core of the guild storage system were the items stored inside. How to allocate these items was the most important part of the guild storage system. Currently, all of the big guilds had different ways of setting up the guild storage, but the theory behind them were all quite similar. Each guild stored a lot of equipment and materials in their storages. The guild leader had absolute authority over the distribution, which meant that they could be considered the guild leader's personal property. These equipments weren't just for show. They were to be used by guild members. However, each guild managed the distribution of their stored equipment with their own sets of rules. This is the so-called guild storage system. Usually, guilds gave each equipment a certain requirement for guild contribution points. When guild members reached a corresponding level, they could freely use equipment within that level. However, these items didn't belong to the players. They only had the right to use them. The guild leader reserved the right to recall any equipment to the guild storage. This condition was only exempted if the guild leader officially gave a certain equipment to a certain player. The equipment would become his or her property if this condition was met. If equipment was lost or damaged by a guild member, they would usually be punished by a deduction to their guild contribution points. Guild contribution points would also be deducted by the usage of consumables such as potions and materials. In a sense, guild contribution points could be said to be a form of currency. How could guild contribution points be earned? Each guild had their own way, but the guild leader also held unlimited power over this. The guild leader could give a guild member unlimited guild contribution points and could also deduct the guild contribution points of any member. With this, a guild leader would no longer simply be a servant for the guild members. A guild leader with rights to distribute benefits to the members was a guild leader that could command respect. But this depended heavily on a guild leader's ability. Guild leaders who handed out rewards and punishments based on impulse wouldn't win the hearts of the masses, and a guild like this wouldn't last long. A guild could only maintain a healthy growth with a complete system that had a clear guideline regarding rewards and punishments. The club guilds had an advantage in this matter. They could use their immense wealth to build up their storage. For a normal player, to achieve such a large scale with only his or her own effort would be extremely hard. The starting equipment in the storage couldn't be bad. It had to be rare items that could make people drool, and that would be the drive for guild members to grind for guild contribution points to get the equipment. To obtain guild contribution points, they could hand in materials and equipment to the guild. With this, the wealth of the guild's storage would increase. The more items and materials owned by the guild, the more player-dependent it became. Benefits seeable with their own eyes were the main reason why players were willing to stay in a guild. Lulan/Slash's ability to form heavenly justice, a guild with a scale as grand as the club guilds, was closely related to his status as a money warrior. Money warriors enjoyed the same advantage as club guilds in the early stages of developing a guild. They could pour money in, helping them build up a wealthy guild storage. Despite not having the charisma of club guilds in terms of attracting fans, they could still depend on their wealth to attract players. Happy at its current stage could only be considered an ordinary guild. Its rapid growth in the 10th server was mainly due to Lord Grimm breaking dungeon records. The players in the new server were noobs who had no knowledge of the guild storage system. Once they learned about it, would their expectations and admiration towards the expert that they idolized be able to stand against the temptation of good equipment? Players in the 10th server were already nearing the level 60 stage. At this point, club guilds were already creating their own guild storage systems. They didn't do so in the early stages as players leveled up too quickly. Equipments that were low-leveled were meaningless even though they had very good quality. At this rate, players that finally had enough points to earn the rights to use the equipment would find themselves no longer in need of the equipments as their levels far exceeded the level of said equipment. A lot of dungeons were available once players reached level 50, which meant that players could level up more quickly. This greatly diminished the worth of level 50 equipment. People were more tempted by the allure of equipment that were level 55 and above. Core members of the big guilds that were rushing for the level 60 stage were starting to be more conscious of the guild's storage. The rare orange equipments that they came across would no longer be made personal property, and they would donate all of them to the guild storage. The equipment that was still rare on the market at this stage became the core of the guild storage. Next, obtaining and assigning different contribution points to purple, blue, and items of other grades would cause guild members to realize the difference between having a high amount contribution points and having little to no contribution points. If Happy didn't implement such a system, they would never be able to contend with the club guilds. The sheer temptation of such benefits would be enough to cause Happy to fall. Towards Happy, these club guilds definitely wouldn't give up the change to topple it. Deep down, Blue River hoped that Ye Xiu would forget about it as he was quite expectant of making Happy disintegrate without the use of force. In his eyes, Happy was a strong competitor. The King's Avatar Volume 5 Ace Showdown Chapter 523 Chapter 523 True Goal Lord Grimm returned to the 10th server. In a competitor's perspective, only Blue River came to pry around. After Blue River finished his prying, he was caught in a dilemma. The other side said he was there to steal the Topaz Knight, but he said it in such a straightforward fashion. Was it true or false? If it was true, would he want all the equipment? If it's false, then what on earth is he planning to do? Blue Rain felt very stupid. Why did he even ask this? In reality, he had just blurted out what was on his mind. He hadn't thought the other side would directly answer him. As a result, he was now wondering whether Lord Grimm was telling the truth or not. Putting these conflicts as competitors aside, the main subject would be Guild Happy's welcome back party. The guild leader went to the heavenly domain. After understanding the concept of the heavenly domain, the players of Happy Guild all felt proud. However, after feeling proud for a period of time, they slowly came to realize something. Frankly speaking, it was only the guild leader's personal glory in terms of themselves. What benefits did they have? None. absolutely none. Apart from having no benefits, there were even disadvantages. After Lord Grimm entered the heavenly domain, he had only returned once. After not returning for a long time, many of the records in the 10th server were taken by other guilds. Guild Happy completely lost their imposing manner from before and now looked as if it would gradually fall to becoming just an average guild. The people's will had begun to waver, but not much yet. This was because in comparison to a normal guild, Happy was still quite incredible. However, compared to the surging rise of those club guilds, they couldn't help but feel jealous. Those who had joined Happy admired Lord Grimm's fame and power. They had thrown themselves under this expert hoping to bask in his light. Their current situation and the situation they imagined were very different though. Suddenly, their guild leader returned. Quite a few immediately surrounded him in excitement. Last time Lord Grimm returned, he swept through several records and raised their guild's fame to greater heights. What would he do this time? Happy's players hoped to participate. Guild leader, you came back. Guild leader, what are you planning to do this time? Guild leader, are you going to challenge the records? Ye Xiu laughed heartily towards their excitement. He didn't hide his intention and said, I've come back to do great things. Why else other than to create a stir did the players of Guild Happy join the guild? The players who found joy in their own way wouldn't rely on someone else's power to do things. As a result, when the guild members heard that they would be doing great things, many of them enthusiastically asked to join. Guild leader, what great things? We'll do it with you. To steal a boss, Ye Xiu replied. Wow, everyone was in admiration. Their guild leader was indeed extraordinary. Boss stealing was a phrase specifically for stealing wild bosses. Normally, a guild wouldn't gather together for a random elite or rare boss. However, wild bosses would appear on TV every time they were killed. Until now, regardless of which wild boss was taken down, it was almost always the big guilds that made their names onto TV. Now Guild Happy could finally fight for a chance to come into the limelight. I'll go, I'll go. None of them bothered to ask which boss they would be stealing. All of them signed up excitedly. Everyone will go, everyone will go. Ye Xiu replied, which made the whole guild bubble up in excitement. Many players with lower levels were worried that they wouldn't be able to participate in such an important task, but it turned out that everyone could go. It was as if they had received an amazing prize. Which boss are we going to steal? Only now did someone ask, eager to fight. Topaz Knight, a level 50 boss, do you know of it? Ye Xiu asked. Not really. Many of the people replied. The majority of them had only heard of wild bosses from online databases. These bosses were all monopolized by the club guilds. Those who don't know about it go search it up and do a bit of research. Those who know about it go to the Western Wilderness to level up, spread out. Message me immediately if you discover anything, Ye Xiu spoke. Understood. Many people replied with passion. The guild leader had yet to stay for 5 minutes, but he was already working hard. This type of leading were very refreshing. Players of Happy Guild set off towards the Western Wilderness. Even the players who needed to know about the boss online also moved out. They were only doing some reading so they could multitask. At the same time, every guild leader from the club guilds received a message. What? He plans on stealing the Topaz Knight, Cold Night, Plantago Seed, Lonely Drink, Backlight Bomb, Hazy Mist. They received this information only slightly later than Blue River. Moreover, the information came too easily. It came straight from Happy's guild chat. Only a blind spy would miss it. None of the guilds was willing to challenge Lord Grimm alone. Thus, Cold Night contacted Plantago Seed contacted Lonely Drink contacted Backlight Bomb, and so on until another 10th server guild leader discussion group sprouted up again. The discussion was once again the same old issue: what to do with Lord Grimm. Lord Grimm was going to steal the Topaz Knight. Oh, you have spies right. The discussion group started off with this line, making everyone stare at the screen in thought. Every time they fought against Lord Grimm, there would always be a moment of silence. Isn't this an issue? The information came way too easily. It made everyone feel a bit puzzled. Plantago Seed raised the issue and then waited for everyone else to analyze it. I've never heard of anyone starting an operation in the guild chat, Hazy Mist said. And there's no way he doesn't know we have spies in his guild, no, Cold Knight said. It must have been intentional. Someone else agreed with this point. It was definitely intentional, but why? Blue River asked. To make a declaration for the east and strike west, cross the river way. Perhaps he wants us to believe his goal is the Topaz Knight by sending a majority of his forces to the western wilderness, but his real goal might in fact be something else. It's certainly a possibility. Then what is his true objective? Wait 1 second. What if his objective really is the Topaz Knight and he's making us believe it's a misdirection in order to split our forces? Someone else pointed out. Then why would he even say anything in the first place? Another person said, our forces are split up in the first place. Who would spend the entire day watching a single boss? True. Cold Knight expressed his agreement. So it's a misdirection, Plantago Seed said. His guild has already begun to move. Hazy Mist said, everyone. How? Everyone was a bit dumbstruck. When they fought against a boss, they always send their elite and core teams. They rarely moved their entire guild. This was because they knew there would be competition for every boss. If every fight became a world war, everyone's strength would be greatly damaged, especially in a server that hadn't stabilized yet. No one dared to act so rashly, which was why everyone restricted the strength used carefully. After all, these weren't necessary items. This was a normal server. The extremely rare items of the normal servers and the extremely rare items of the heavenly domain weren't on the same level. The main reason was because there were 10 normal servers, but only 1 heavenly domain. But now, Happy wasn't following the tacit agreement between the clubs. He had dispatched his entire guild, making the club guilds unsure what to do. If they dispatched their elite teams like usual, they would be wiped out simply due to the other side having superior numbers. FCK, we should also send everyone out and completely turn over Happy, Lonely Drink shouted. Wait a second. A thought suddenly appeared in Cold Knight's head. What if this is his real objective? Because he knows very well how we do things. What if he's intentionally dispatching his guild to lure away our elites in order to do something else? That's extremely likely. If his real objective is at somewhere very far away, then by the time we receive the message, it's too late to hurry back. Plantago Seed agreed. You guys wait a moment. This is a wild boss. It doesn't spawn at a specific time. If he uses the Topaz Knight as a distraction, what if the Topaz Knight spawns but his real objective doesn't? Wouldn't he have done everything for nothing? Hazy Mist argued. No, he probably isn't thinking like this. He's gathering his forces at the western wilderness, so we have to send our forces to resist. If that's the case, then as long as his true objective spawns earlier than the Topaz Knight, then his scheme will succeed. If the Topaz Knight really does spawn first, then he can just switch bosses and try again. It's a 50-50 chance. No one knows which boss will spawn first, so he can't completely grasp it, no. Cold Knight was quite detailed. Which wild bosses can still spawn this week? Do you think we'll be able to find anything by thinking about this? Backlight Bomb suddenly spoke. The top guilds had this sort of information. Soon afterwards, they looked at the map and looked for a leveling area far away from the western wilderness. Wait, Plantago Seed suddenly said. I just received a bit of information from my side. I don't know if any of you have noticed. What? Someone immediately asked. If Lord Grimm is misdirecting us, he must have his main force at his true objective. So I specially had my people pay attention to the movements of a few of these characters, and my people have noticed something. Plantago Seed discovered important information and told them of it. Are you saying your people have been paying attention to soft mists and steamed bun invasions movements? Cold Night immediately reacted. It seems like you've been doing the same. Plantago Seed said. Where are they heading towards? Cold Night asked. I don't know right now, but they're definitely not heading towards the western wilderness. I'll have my people continue following them. Plantago Seed said. Okay, you have to watch them carefully. Everyone cried excitedly as if they had discovered the new world. The King's Avatar Volume 5 Ace Showdown Chapter 524 Chapter 524 Complete Chaos. The discussion group went into a period of silence once again. Everyone was anxiously waiting for a final detailed report. At the same time, they sent several players to pay attention to the movements of Lord Grimm as well as the few capable subordinates under him. These capable subordinates had been exposed cleanly already, and the big guilds saw their names everywhere. The scouting went smoothly. Soon, all of the guild leaders present in the discussion group sent out expressions of delight. They looked as if they had schemes prepared. It seems like everyone knows. Plantago Seed, who knew about this intelligence a while ago, spoke. All Martian, Cold Night said. Correct, the setting sun hunter, so this is his target, Lonely Drink said. It looks like we can present him with a little surprise. Plantago Seed smiled. This time we've got to kill his spirit. Yes, not only do we need to steal away his boss, we're going to have him experience a total wipeout. The guilds began their preparations in excitement. They didn't dare be negligent of Lord Grimm's elite team, so they dispatched all of their elites. How many people was enough? They had failed so many times that they could no longer make an estimate. It wasn't like they could go wrong with having too many. When does the setting sun hunter spawn? I'm looking forward to it. These guys were already imagining the beautiful scene in front of them. Getting Lord Grimm to eat SHT would be such an amazing feeling. If his true target really is only the Topaz Knight, then what? Seeing everyone's appearances, Blue River couldn't help but feel uneasy. That's true. Cold Night, who had crossed paths with Ye Xiu many times before, also had a sort of premonition. We'll go elites against elites, a sea of people against a sea of people. We should also send some people over to Western Wilderness. It's only one guild after all. They don't have that many people, so if each of us send a few people, it'll be enough. There aren't any strong characters there anyways. If we have the safe number of troops as them, we have the advantage. Right. This way we won't have any holes, Lonely Drink praised. Western Wilderness level 50 leveling area. In the 10th server, level 50-55 was the prevalent level range. The players in club guilds, whether they were normal members or elites, weren't in this range. They were at the top in terms of leveling speed. All of them were above level 55, with the elites having already reached level 60. As a result, the arrival of an army of high-leveled players suddenly appearing in Western Wilderness quickly attracted the attention of many. Everyone in the army had tags from top guilds beside their name. Any player with a bit of keenness could tell that something had happened. These high-leveled players had already received orders from the guilds. They were to scatter across the Western Wilderness, look out for the spawning of the wild boss, and pay attention to the movements of guild-happy players. On the other end of the map, the situation was exactly the same for all Martian, just with more people. The waiting continued, but the boss never came. The club guild players were already getting impatient, but they couldn't act irrationally, especially in a leveling area with so many people watching. The wind sweeping through the tower heralds a rising storm in the mountains. However, this wind was taking a bit too long. Moreover, the spawn time for a boss was far less accurate than a weather report. The club guild players quickly began to get bored. In comparison, the guild-happy players were extremely busy because they weren't high-leveled players. The Western Wilderness was a very suitable leveling for them, so they could kill monsters while wandering around. The morning passed. The eyes of the guild leaders had already turned red from staring at the computer for so long. There was nothing they could have done. All of them were nighttime workers and usually slept in the morning. Who could thought that the devil Lord Grimm returning would force them to work overtime and struggle to the afternoon? They were completely exhausted. Seeing that the boss still hadn't spawned, the guild leaders told the others they were going to rest and to wake them up if anything happened. At 3:07 p.m., the guild leaders were brutally awoken from their deep sleep. The suddenly awoken guild leaders immediately asked what the situation was while struggling towards their computers. Before reaching their computers, they already learned of the news. The Topaz Knight had spawned. What are Happy's players doing? The guild leaders practically asked at the same time. There doesn't seem to be any movements from them. Their subordinates reported. Ha 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 ha, as expected. The guild leaders were delighted, and they immediately to discuss it in the discussion group. But not long after, they came across a very contradictory issue. Shouldn't they try and steal the Topaz Knight from each other? However, they had invested a bit too many troops into the operation, so they couldn't act blindly without thinking. According to a report, a randomly put-together team was currently fighting the Topaz Knight and was getting absolutely crushed. A wild boss couldn't be taken down by some random team, let alone randoms from this leveling area. As a result, none of the guild leaders were shaken by this. Their main opponents were the ones in the discussion group. Cough, cough. There's quite a lot of people over there. If everyone starts attacking, it'll be messy, Plantago Seed spoke. Afterwards, no one gave a response. Plantago Seed saw this and knew these beastards had already come up with an evil scheme. None of them were going to talk about it. Thus, the discussion group immediately fell into silence. The guild leaders went to contact the people at the Western Wilderness to further understand the situation. 13 guild leaders, each with at least 100 troops, gathered together at the Western Wilderness. The Topaz Knight and his cavalry weren't far from them. The enemy boss had just killed off another random team. Another group of players took their place. The 13 guilds didn't bat an eye towards them and only paid attention to their real opponents. The deadlock couldn't last forever. They couldn't just stand there staring at each other for the entire weekend. The first side to move might not necessarily lose because no one knew each other's cards or plans. Every side had to adapt to the situation every time a battle for a boss took place. Strength, strategy, luck. Any one of these could determine the result. At the Western Wilderness, the small-scale conflicts gradually began to spread out. Soon afterwards, even those who wished to join the fray until all others were exhausted first were wrapped into the chaos. Killing a boss entailed killing each other. One moment, two sides might be attacking and defending together. The next moment, the two sides might be at each other's throats. The boss's health went down as players fell. As for those random teams, the smart ones had already fled. The dirty ones remained as scrap pickers. However, the scrap-picking business wasn't as developed in normal servers because the drop rate couldn't be compared to the heavenly domain. Amidst this chaos, the guild leaders suddenly received an intelligence report from spies. Lord Grimm had ordered his guild to set out for the Topaz Knight. What? At this time, everyone stared in astonishment. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Guild-happy players saw Lord Grimm's message and began gathering towards that direction. Outside of the chaotic battle, players with the guild-happy tag on top of their heads began to appear. 1, 2, 10, 20, 100, 200. They weren't high-leveled. Some weren't even level 50. They couldn't compare at all to the players from the big guilds. However, they had more players on their side and happened to appear just when the 13 guilds were fighting amongst each other. Stop, 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 stop over there. Don't give Lord Grimm easy pickings. Someone in the discussion group immediately shouted. Could this guy's real target actually be the Topaz Knight? FCK, get all Martians people to hurry over. They won't get here in time, and what if this is just a trick of his? They were all pulling out their hairs in conflict. However, at least they understood one thing. If this chaotic battle continued, Guild Happy might become the Oriole. We're stealing a boss anyways. There's no need to be nice. Let's all kill the players from Happy first, someone suggested. It looks like that's our only choice. Everyone unanimously agreed and made the command. In the blink of an eye, the 13 guilds went from fighting each other to standing shoulder to shoulder with each other. They turned to look at Happy and suddenly charged at them. Run! At this moment, an order came out from Happy. Happy's players suddenly turned tail and ran. The big guild players were still far away and wouldn't be able to attack them. FCK, what is this SHT? The guilds were pulling at their hair. In this moment of confusion, the Topaz Knight suddenly led his cavalry towards an aggroed target. The target couldn't just stand there and do nothing. He hastily attacked back. The other guilds saw this. Not good. If this continued, the Topaz Knight would be killed by him. Thus, they immediately went to stop him. With the guilds fighting amongst each other again, Guild Happy's players came back. Guild Happy didn't try to conceal their actions either. Lord Grimm gave his order in the public chat, so the guild leaders received the message at the same time too. What should they do this time? Should they turn and attack? If they attack and the other side runs, the boss will attack and nothing will change. Split our troops into two, someone suggested. Right. Everyone nodded their heads. If they sent half of their troops to chase after Happy's players and had half their players continue to attack the boss, wouldn't that work? The order came out. Half of the troops from each guild chased after Happy's players. Happy's players ran away again, but this time the pursuit didn't stop. The big guild players continued to chase them. Even if they couldn't kill them, they could at least push them far away. Not long afterwards, Happy's players were pushed to one area. The guild leaders received a message saying Lord Grimm had called for everyone to group together. Not good. If we chase them randomly, our troops will be scattered. The guild leaders suddenly realized the situation wasn't good. Don't chase them impatiently. Stay in formation. Don't scatter. The guild leaders immediately warned the pursuit team. A response from the pursuit team hadn't even come yet when the boss team sent a message. We can't hold on. What can't you hold on? The guild leaders were confused. Boss, we can't hold the boss. The King's Avatar Volume 5 Ace Showdown Chapter 525 Chapter 525 Can't hold the boss, you guys can't hold the boss. FCK, who has the boss's aggro? Can you get the last hit in? After receiving the report, the guild leaders hastily asked in surprise. Simply speaking, the monster belonged to whomever the monster had aggro on. The items dropped would be protected by the system for that player. Within 30 seconds, no one else besides that player would be able to pick up the items. It all sounds very simple, but calculating aggro is actually quite complicated. Normally, the last hit counts for a lot. It's worth several times a normal hit. This is easy to understand. After all, the last hit is the hit which takes away the other side's life. The other side would obviously have enmity towards the killer. Apart from this, the first hit is also significant. The amount of aggro for the first hit depends on the situation. There is a difference in aggro between the first hit by a player taking the initiative to attack the monster and the first hit by player counterattacking a monster's attack. In short, the general rules are very simple, but the details aren't simple at all, especially against a boss. Bosses have names, background stories, and personalities. These types of details make how the aggro is calculated for each boss different. For example, if you take the last hit, some bosses would have 5 times the aggro for it, but other bosses might have 10 or 20 times the aggro for it. Some bosses have increased aggro after falling to a red blood state. Some bosses are very sensitive to the first hit. Thus, understanding the rules behind a boss's aggro was a very important part of stealing a boss. Usually the last hit never disappointed, which was why all of the guild leaders asked their subordinates about it. When two teams accumulated similar amounts of aggro, the last hit would often be the deciding factor. However, the reply made them even more flabbergasted. No, it's not that we can't steal the boss. Then what is it? We can't hold the boss off. What? Whose scheme is this? This isn't a scheme. None of us can hold on. What type of stupid joke is this, you guys? At this moment, the guild leader suddenly stopped. He realized why this had happened, and at the same time the discussion group exploded into a commotion. Clearly, the can't hold on wasn't pointing towards any one guild but every single guild there. They actually couldn't hold the boss. Why? The guild leaders originally found it hard to believe. They were about to call it nonsense, but while typing their response halfway through, they suddenly realized what had happened. Why? It was because the ones killing the boss were new. These players might be relatively high-leveled compared to the mainstream, but they were still normal players. Usually, the core elites hunted the wild bosses. These elites were from the heavenly domain with many years of glory and had a good understanding of the normal servers. They could clear dungeons and kill bosses. But these normal players, this was their first time doing it. The Aquamarine Knight had only been killed 3 times so far in the 10th server, and had been killed by the guild elites every time. How could these normal guild members have experience in killing these types of bosses? When trying to kill a boss for the first time, even if your team read a guide beforehand, wiping out several times wouldn't be strange at all. The reason the club guilds could bring their normal guild members to level higher than the norm wasn't because these guild members were crazy levelers. More importantly, the club guilds had experts and veterans watching over them. What did this entail? When an expert or veteran led a party into a dungeon, there would be fewer losses. As for 5 noobs, whenever a new dungeon came out, the noobs would die many times before clearing it. In glory, dying would result in a loss of experience. Dying would reduce your leveling speed, no. As a result, there would obviously be a level difference between club guild players and non-guild players. And now, these normal players who had experts and veterans helping finally encountered a difficulty. Against the Aquamarine Knight, an existence far stronger than a dungeon boss, these normal players had no way to hold on. In the beginning, the guilds all had a lot of players. The chaos made it difficult for them to see the struggling players near the boss. Afterwards, half of the people went to chase after Guild Happy's people. When information came about Guild Happy grouping together, and the guild leaders became worried if something had happened on that side, the ones left facing the boss were already defeated. The Aquamarine Knight and his cavalry had already summoned their war horses. They took formation and launched an assault. Their iron hooves lifted the yellow sand into the air, creating a huge cloud of dust in the western desert. The cavalry and the yellow sand crashed into the players and enveloped them. The players had never seen this sort of scene before. Glory didn't have any mounts. The knight in the knight class only symbolized a type of ideal. It didn't indicate a soldier on a horse. The Aquamarine Knight and his entourage were huge and menacing cavalry. Should they attack the horse or the person? If they attack the horse, which part of the horse should they attack to have the greatest effect? If they attack the person, what if their weapons aren't long enough? While the players pondered over these questions, the cavalry knocked them onto the ground. The unlucky ones were even trampled on a few times. Those cut down by the knights on the horses took heavy damage. The ones charged down several times turned into corpses on the spot. A few veterans led the teams, but they couldn't control the situation. Helpless, they asked their guild leaders for help, while hastily transferring the ones in pursuit of Guild Happy over to their side. When the troops in pursuit heard the call for help, they were also confused. They had a hard time understanding why the other troops were being cut down by the boss. But when they went back to see, all of them froze. What is this? What are we supposed to do? How do we hit the ones on top of the horses? It doesn't look like hitting the horses does anything. Ah, I fell. Ah, the horse stepped on me. Ah, where did that sword come from? Ah, I'm dead. Corpses everywhere describe the battlefield well. How strong was a wild boss? Against cloth-armored character, some skills could even one-shot them. The Aquamarine Knight's cavalry might not be as strong as the boss, but they were still comparable to elite monsters. Their strikes were enough to deal heavy damage to any player. The discussion group had turned into chaos, because they clearly knew about the Aquamarine Knight's strength. When they took a closer look, the dispatched troops weren't enough to deal with him. No matter how numerous the troops, without an effective strategy, the troops would only be cannon fodder in front of a wild boss. The boss could easily wipe them all out. It was too late to ask for help. The rest of the guild had gone to Almartian. The guild leaders looked on with deathly pale expressions. They realized what Lord Grimm had done. Lord Grimm had lured away the elites with his elites and left everyone else to take care of this boss. Their sea of people wasn't enough to defeat the boss, though. What about Happy? If our people can't do it, how can Happy do it? Someone asked in puzzlement. Another person immediately answered back, it's different. How is it different? The commander is different. Everyone fell silent. Commander, it was truly different. Lord Grimm was at the top in all of glory, and their side. It would be too embarrassing to even make a comparison. At the Western Desert, players from the 13 guilds ran around the map in chaos. The Aquamarine Knight and his cavalry continued to chase and kill. Whoever they pursued died. After all, the enemies had horses. At this moment, Guild Happy had already gathered together and climbed up a sand dune. The troops were lined up neat and organized. They appeared from behind, welcoming the club guild players running for their lives. These players saw the towering troops and were so frightened that they didn't know which way to run. In an instant, the Aquamarine Knight and his cavalry wiped them clean. The Aquamarine Knight's aggro had already gone into disorder. It was now taking the initiative to attack instead of retaliating against enemy attacks. The Aquamarine Knight saw more targets in his line of sight and charged towards them without hesitation. The yellow sand billowed under the cavalry's hooves. The cavalry moved like the wind towards Happy's players. The sounds of horses running on the sand were only sound effects and didn't do any damage. Mages, Ye Xiu ordered in the guild chat. Because he was commanding the entire guild, he used the guild chat. When he yelled mages, all of the mages lifted their staffs into the air. The gems on their staffs glinted in the sun. Ice wall, Ye Xiu gave an order. All of the mages immediately began casting the spell. Magic waves rippled, and in an instant, nearly 100 ice walls shot out of the ground like a mountain range, blocking the Aquamarine Knights and his cavalry's assault. Bang! An enormous sound reverberated into the air. The Aquamarine Knight and his cavalry didn't waver in front of the ice walls and continued their charge. Bang, 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 bang. Ice walls shattered one after the other. Thieves, advance! Ye Xiu gave another order. 20 or 30 thieves hid within the cracks between the ice walls. The King's Avatar, Volume 5, Ace Showdown, Chapter 526. Chapter 526. Killing amidst the chaos, the Aquamarine Knight and his cavalry pressed forward, but after crashing into several ice walls, their momentum finally slowed. Happy's thief team closed in. They didn't ask for any single target or look for any route. They simply placed a trap wherever there was free space. Everyone put down as many traps as possible and then immediately ran far, far away. Peng, 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 peng. Moments later, the sounds of ice walls breaking stopped. The charge made by the Aquamarine Knight and his cavalry had been stopped. Numerous ice walls still stood. Needless to say, after the cavalry was forced to a halt, the leading Aquamarine Knight brandished his sword and shattered the ice wall in front of him with a swing. Advance! The Aquamarine Knight and his cavalry continued to head towards their intended target. Several ice walls were quickly smashed apart by them. The ice fragments sprinkled onto the ground. The scene didn't look like it belonged here in the desert. However, no one had any time to appreciate it. Everyone could already see the light glinting from the Aquamarine Knight's sword. At this moment, the mage team fell back. The knights moved forward to be the defensive line. "Shields up," Lord Grim ordered. The knights in front lifted their shields and hid behind them. "Cleric, get ready." When Lord Grim gave his second order, the Aquamarine Knight and his cavalry arrived. Except this time, the short distance between them wasn't enough for a full charge. The Aquamarine Knight and his cavalry strided over and raised their swords. Dong, 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 dong. The sounds of metal colliding with metal repeatedly rang. The knights didn't care if there were even enemies in front of them. All of them raised their shields in front of them at a 45-degree angle. The knights who were attacked could clearly feel their shields jumping back and forth. Blocking the fierce attacks affected their control over their characters. Their health also fell like waterfalls with every attack. In this type of situation, even if there were clerics healing, the knights were already worried if they would be able to properly block the second attack. Fortunately, Lord Grim didn't have them take the second attack. When the Aquamarine Knight and his cavalry made their first swing, Lord Grim gave another order. "Ninjas, underground tunneling technique, body bind technique." While the Aquamarine Knight had been breaking through the ice walls, the ninjas had hidden themselves under the sand. Now they popped out of the sand into the air and threw the rope attached to their ninja blades towards the knights on horseback. They didn't have any targets in mind and simply aimed at the most convenient target. There might be slip-ups or repeats, but those weren't important. It was more important they took the opportunity in front of them. Ye Xiu knew very well how unskilled his happy players were, so he didn't set up anything complicated or difficult. The mages cast ice walls easy. The thieves set traps simple. The knights block an attack, no need to talk about it. The ninjas had a slightly more difficult task because their underground tunneling technique and body bind technique were combos. Both of them had to be chained correctly, and the body bind technique had to be used in the air. It was an easy task for any Heavenly Domain player, but it wasn't so easy for these 10th server noobs. As a result, Ye Xiu didn't have any requirements. All they needed to do was hit whatever target they could and not care about anyone else. A few of the attacks might be repeated, but a single person's mistake could be made up by someone else. A few attacks might miss, but even more mistakes would occur with anything more complicated anyways. The 30 or so ninjas launched their attacks against the 19 Aquamarine Knight cavalry. It was nearly a 2-to-1 ratio. But because Ye Xiu didn't put any requirements for them, there might be a target hit by several attacks or there might be a target hit by none. In any case, people went up and horses flipped. The majority of the knights hit by the tunnel bind combo were dismounted. Some of them were hit but didn't fall and the ninjas ended up on the horses. This wasn't strange. After all, the Aquamarine Knight was a wild boss. All of his underlings were powerful elite monsters and had strong resistance towards many attacks. If the player didn't aim correctly, the intended effect might not occur. Battle mages, circle swing. At this moment, another wave of attacks flew out. The battle mage team pincered from the left and right. After the ninjas used the tunnel bind combo, the battle mages immediately stabbed at the knights who hadn't fallen off their horses. Some of their attacks might miss or might be late, but in the end, the remaining mounted knights were thrown off. One wave after another wave came. Moreover, when these knights fell, there was even a small shockwave, knocking the ones lifted off by the ninjas back down to the ground. Witches, level 50 and up use Dal Shururu, under level 50 use Lava Flask, Ice Rain. Launchers Stinger, Spitfire Incendiary Device, Mechanics Machine Drop, Summoners surround them with pets, Berserkers, Brawlers, Chi Masters. Lord Grim gave out order after order. Ye Xiu had already set the chat up so that besides him, no one else could speak, so no one would be distracted by any messages other than the orders. Happy's players continued doing their tasks. Witches flew through the air, bombarding the cavalry with the items that Lord Grimm had instructed them to throw down. Bang, 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 bang. The launchers stood at the backlines and shot their stingers into the air. The stingers flew over everyone's heads and exploded above the cavalry. Each missile exploded into 8 smaller missiles, which rained down onto the battlefield. The Spitfire's incendiary devices worked together with the lava flasks thrown down by the witches and covered the sand with a sea of fire. The mechanics' airdrops filled the skies with winter melons. Their stomachs opened and poured down trash. The summoned creatures advanced and filled up the little space left. The other classes also attacked. In an instant, the Aquamarine Knight and his cavalry were submerged in attacks. In this area, the only thing that could be seen were struggling shadows. Nothing else could be seen clearly. Don't squeeze. Let me go through. I still haven't used my skill. You berserker, you've already used your skill, right? If you're done, move aside. Whose goblin is this? Can't you let me go through? Don't make me kill it. Ah, who hit my butt? Amidst the noise from attacks, the constant yelling from Happy's players could be heard too. The spies within Happy followed along but couldn't see anything properly. As glory veterans, Happy's way of fighting the boss was unbearable to look at. Everyone was crammed together as if they were in a crowded train. But they also discovered that their coordination might look unsightly. Every person contributed to the fight. Everyone attacked and moved. Of the around 600 people in the guild, not a single one was left doing nothing. The spies were at a loss. They had already received orders to find some way to stop Happy from killing the Aquamarine Knight. But in this chaotic mess, there was nothing they could do because the battle had already reached an unimaginable step. It might be chaotic, but the attacks continued. How were they supposed to stop it? Make the battle organized. Watching from inside the battle, Happy looked like a complete mess, but from afar it looked like a war zone filled with fire, spells, sword light. It looked like a highlight reel for skills. Currently, all of the level 50 and under skills were flashing left and right. The surrounding players entered and exited kept this bustling movement going. The remaining players of the 13 guilds stared in complete astonishment. The feeling they got from the spies was completely different. They felt it was a next-level boss battle. The Aquamarine Knight's cavalry had been surrounded by these players and were struggling helpless to do anything. Pay attention, don't harm your own allies. Ye Xiu repeatedly sent out this order. There was nothing he could do about it. Apart from special events, a 100-man group was the largest unit in glory. Those in the same group couldn't injure each other, but anyone outside of their group could be hurt. Happy had 600 or 700 players, so there were 6 or 7 groups. In this type of situation, it was hard to avoid self-injury. These noobs weren't good at controlling their attacks. Ah, I think I killed one of them, someone suddenly shouted in surprise. The system had clearly notified him that he had killed off one of the Aquamarine Knight's subordinate. Ah, I killed one too. Even though there were around 600 players, the system could tell them apart and gave out system notifications accordingly. I killed one. I also killed one. The Aquamarine Knight's underlings had the same stats. Against a relatively similar offense, they would fall around the same time. The King's Avatar Volume 5 Ace Showdown Chapter 527, Chapter 527. Treasure. Around 600 players were attacking. How long would it take to kill a boss? Very few knew the answer to this question. It was also difficult to find a precise answer to this type of question. Coordination, skill, equipment, levels, classes, target. There were simply too many factors involved. However, the speed at which the Aquamarine Knight and his cavalry were being destroyed by Guild Happy was extremely frightening. The Aquamarine Knight's underlings fell one after the other until only the Aquamarine Knight remained. And the Aquamarine Knight. He was stronger than his subordinates, but his current situation was even worse than before. Before, against the strong offense, his knights had taken a defensive formation around him. His 18 knights formed a circle with him in the center. They even blocked the aerial attacks from above. But now all of his underlings had fallen. Surrounding him, a mob of summoned creatures now took their places. "Okay, besides Team 1, everyone stop attacking," Ye Xiu immediately ordered. The poor summoned creatures had previously been there in order to act as meat shields against the enemy attacks. If Ye Xiu didn't order everyone to stop, these creatures would die under their master's hands. The benefit of the people was that they listened, even more so for someone they admired like Lord Grimm. Under Ye Xiu's command, everyone else apart from Team 1 stopped attacking and withdrew. When they looked back, they couldn't even see the boss anymore. The summoned creatures had completely enveloped the Aquamarine Knight. The light shining from his sword could still be seen, though. Every time the Aquamarine Knight slashed, several summoned creatures let out shrill shrieks and died. When a summoned creature died, the creature could be summoned again, but the skill had a cooldown. The stronger the creature, the longer the cooldown and the greater the mana cost would be. Summoners frequently ran out of mana. Team 1 advance, Team 2 get ready, Team 3 rest. Ye Xiu had split the summoners into 3 teams and controlled their pacing. Launchers continue firing, don't stop. Team 1 also had launchers. Even though the summoned creatures were in their way, it didn't affect them. Elementalists keep firing too. Ye Xiu ordered the elementalists to attack. Too easy, Ye Xiu sighed. The Aquamarine Knight could see his health falling rapidly. All of his attacks just ended up hitting the summoned creatures. Even though he sometimes used a whirlwind slash to clear them away, he was facing a team of summoners. Each summoner could summon several creatures. With 3 teams rotating, he could hack at the creatures all he wanted, but he would never kill them all. Ye Xiu had understood the Aquamarine Knight's patterns already. Killing it off like this wouldn't be a problem, even when the knight entered its enraged mode at 10% health. The knight's fury wouldn't change the situation. The only variable was the club guilds. However, their elites were currently all the way at Almarchen. The people from before, Ye Xiu looked at them. They were scattered around the desert, observing from far away. They didn't even dare to come close. What could they do if backup arrived? But at this point, it was already too late for the backup to do anything. The traps he had the thieves set up ended up being unnecessary. Ye Xiu carefully calculated and finally relaxed. This Aquamarine Knight wouldn't be able to escape. The Aquamarine Knight struggled. The Aquamarine Knight went berserk. The Aquamarine Knight fell. Everything happened extremely quickly. The spies could only give this description in their reports to their guild leaders. What type of boss battle was this? They thought about it deeply. It looked like everyone was just randomly attacking, but they could clearly see the orders Lord Grimm gave. With a commander leading everyone, how could it be called randomly attacking? It must be some sort of profound art. The spies screenshotted the orders Ye Xiu gave and treated them like great achievements in their careers. Afterwards, they quickly sent them to their respective guild leaders, detailing Lord Grimm's incredible feat. Around 600 people killed a boss by attacking randomly. Whenever the spies chatted with others, they loved to talk about this experience. In their circle, this opening remark continued to stay popular for a long period of time. In the Western Desert, cheers erupted, becoming the only noise that could be heard in this area. Guild Happy's name appeared on TV. This made every single member of Happy feel extremely proud. Happy's fame had previously entirely been brought up by their guild leader, Lord Grimm. They had joined Happy, hoping to have their fame echo throughout the entire server just like Lord Grimm. This time, they finally got what they desired. Even though the system had only announced their guild's name, they could see their own names within the 2 words Guild Happy. At this moment, they didn't even pay attention to see what the boss dropped. This was supposed to be the reward for killing a boss, but right now, Happy had completely forgotten about it. It was only until half a minute later did someone finally think about the drops. In the guild chat, their guild leader Lord Grimm had already announced what had dropped. Orange equipment. Everyone grew excited. For normal players, there was no need to hold any expectation of getting a silver weapon. Those didn't even drop anyways. Orange equipment was their end goal. In Glory, orange equipment had the lowest drop rate. Many players could only admire the pictures of one online, especially for those only dropped by wild bosses. Wild bosses were monopolized by the big guilds, so how would a normal player ever get the chance to possess one? Everyone was still admiring this orange weapon when Lord Grimm sent another message. This orange equip is the result of everyone's hard work, so this piece of equipment belongs to the guild. In a bit, I'm going to put it into the guild storage. When you go into the guild storage, you'll be able to see the rules for borrowing it. Oh, Happy's players didn't really understand it yet. They were somewhat at a loss at what Ye Xiu meant by guild storage. Only the few experienced players understood what he meant and immediately became excited. If the equipment was put into the guild storage, it meant that once one reached a certain level of guild contribution, one could use it. Orange weapon. Even for old players, the majority of them had never possessed one before. Even though they might not be able to personally own one, they would still get the chance to use one if it was in the guild storage. These old players wanted to know what the necessary guild contribution was in order to use this weapon. An orange weapon should require quite a high amount of guild contribution. If they spent too much time accumulating points, their levels might become too high. Using a level 50 orange equipment at higher levels would still have lower stats than other equipment at the suitable level, but the word orange was too enticing. Some players didn't even care about stats and cared more about the rarity of an equipment. For them, equipment was more for showing off to others than the stats. In terms of stats, the orange equipment that dropped from the Aquamarine Knight was quite good. Desert Badge, level 50. Apart from basic magic resistance, it had plus 22 stamina, plus 5 movement speed, plus 5 jump, plus 5% magic resistance. This was a suitable accessory for any class. Magic resistance was the basic component for an accessory, but the additional stats, stamina, movement speed, jump, percent magic resistance increase. All 4 of these were useful for any class. This dictated the value of Desert Badge compared to other accessories. Even Ye Xiu was happy to see this item. The guild storage needed this type of treasure. An orange weapon might be more valuable than this Desert Badge, but a weapon could only be used by 1 or 2 classes. In other words, only 4–8% of Happy's players would want to use this piece of equipment. But a piece of equipment that could be used by any class was different. Everyone wanted it. This was exactly what he was hoping for. Ye Xiu concluded the boss hunting activity and sent Blue River a message. "Let me take a look at your Blue Brook Guild storage." Blue River was looking at the exploding discussion group when he suddenly received a message from Lord Grimm. He couldn't help but feel a bit diffident. "What did you get?" Blue River asked. Ye Xiu sent a picture of the Desert Badge. Wow, Blue River was astonished. He was also considering it from a guild storage point of view. This equipment was extremely valuable. "Are you selling it?" Blue River asked. "In your dreams," Ye Xiu said. Blue River suddenly remembered Ye Xiu had asked to see his guild storage. Ye Xiu was clearly planning on setting up Happy's storage system the same way as Blue Brook Guilds. Should I give it to him? Blue River hesitated. "Hurry up, there's no point hiding it. Who in Blue Brook Guild can't see it? I'm just too lazy to copy it down. It'd be more convenient if you just sent me a doc instead," Ye Xiu said. "You don't have any spies in Blue Brook Guild?" Blue River was astonished. "If I had a spy, why would I need to ask you?" Ye Xiu questioned Blue River's intelligence. Blue River swallowed his anger. There really wasn't any point hiding it though, so he sent Ye Xiu a list of items in Blue Brook Guild storage. Ye Xiu quickly found the important parts and adjusted the values for Happy. Then he copied and pasted it into Happy's storage system. Ye Xiu quickly received a message from Blue River. God, could I trouble you to replace the guild's name? Thanks. Guild's name. You're using my guild system setup. It has my guild's name on it. Don't you think you should change it to something like Guild Happy or something? Blue River was about to grind his own teeth into dust. As soon as Lord Grimm set up the system, he immediately announced it to the guild. Happy's players went over to look and saw Blue Brook Guild's name everywhere in the rules. This information was quickly reported by Blue Brook Guild spies. Blue River really wanted to smash his head into the wall. The King's Avatar Volume 5 Ace Showdown Chapter 528 Chapter 528 beginning to take shape. Oh, so that's what you meant. My bad. Ye Xiu felt ashamed too. He really hadn't noticed that Blue Brook Guild's storage system rules had Blue Brook Guild's name written all over the place. Send me another copy. Ye Xiu messaged Blue River. Why do you need another copy? Blue River was puzzled. I already deleted the first one. Ye Xiu replied, deleting it after using it. Another way of saying it was burning the bridge after crossing it. Blue River really didn't want to give him another copy, but he couldn't let him just shamelessly copy Blue Brook Guild system word for word, could he? He didn't care about the plagiarism. He just didn't want anyone from Blue Brook Guild bothering him. Helpless, Blue River found the storage system document again, but he started having second thoughts. Once Ye Xiu took the document, he would, at most, replace Blue Brook Guild's name with Guild Happy's. The spies would immediately recognize it and bother Blue Brook Guild about it. Blue River didn't want this information to stay stuck to him. He grinded his teeth and quickly deleted a bunch of parts in the document. Then, amidst Ye Xiu's constant bothering, he sent it over. This document seems a bit different, Ye Xiu replied. I changed it a bit. Blue River coldly replied. Not bad, it's even better than the previous one. You're quite the literary talent. Who wrote the last one? It was way too long-winded. So many words and so effeminate too. Not even web novelists can cheat the word count like that, Ye Xiu said. I wrote that too. Blue River looked up at the sky. Oh, you've really got some literary talent. Do you have any interest in my guild Happy? Our guild just happens to be missing a cultured person such as yourself, Ye Xiu said. Blue River closed the chat window. Meanwhile, Ye Xiu quickly swapped out the old system rules with the new ones and then tossed the desert badge into the guild storage. This level 50 orange equipment was placed in the guild storage's orange equipment stage. 6 players needed 6,000 guild contribution points in order to have access to orange equipment stage 6. Because the desert badge belonged to the guild, this badge couldn't be traded or discarded. However, it could still be dropped when the owner died. When a guild member lost the item in this way, there would usually be penalties, often in the form of guild contribution points. Some guilds even required a down payment for very valuable equipment. Every guild had their own way of managing their own storage. After Ye Xiu placed the treasure into the storage, there were still 2 other pieces of equipment dropped by the Aquamarine Knight, both level 55 blue equipment. He threw those into the guild storage as well. Level 55 blue equipment had similar base stats to level 45 orange equipment. However, an equipment's value largely depended on the additional stats. As a result, a piece of equipment might not be high-leveled, but because of its amazing additional stats, it could be kept, even at high levels. These 2 level 55 blue equipment were fairly ordinary. It was easy to find equipment of this value from dungeons, so he put them into the storage's blue equipment stage 5, which only required 700 guild contribution points. The difference between blue and orange equipment could clearly be seen here. In reality, Orange equipment wasn't 10 times stronger than blue equipment, but it was certainly much rarer. Bosses in dungeons always dropped blue equipment, so blue equipment would naturally be more common. After putting away the equipment, he explained how guild contribution worked to the guild members. He also gave Chen Guo's alternate account authority equivalent to the guild leader. The only power Chen Guo didn't have was removing the guild leader. It's not convenient for me to keep returning to the 10th server, so I'm giving you authority over the guild. Ye Xiu said to Chen Guo, "Don't give me the title of guild leader. Your name has to stay there for everyone to see," Chen Guo advised. "I know that." Ye Xiu nodded his head. "We only have this one piece of orange equip in the guild storage. It's far from being enough." Chen Guo had been in a big guild before and knew the importance of the guild's storage. In truth, not all of the players in club guilds were loyal fans. Quite a few knew that the guild storage for these clubs were wealthy, so they pretended to be fans in order to get in. In any case, it wasn't easy to distinguish between an actual fan and an actor. Everyone liked playing Glory. There were only so many pro teams. Whether or not they were fans, they all knew about the same as other players. "I have a few materials here. You can go ahead and sell the ones that aren't so rare and buy some high-leveled equipment to help fill up our guild storage. Remember to buy high-leveled ones. The higher the better. Ignore the low-leveled ones. When the guild members start contributing, they'll put in low-leveled ones." Ye Xiu said, "You don't need the materials. I'm already in the heavenly domain. These materials still aren't that cheap in the current 10th server, so if you can sell them, it's best to sell them here. Later, if I need them, I can buy them again. It'll be cheaper later," Ye Xiu said. Chen Guo immediately understood Ye Xiu's reasoning. Without any delay, she followed Ye Xiu's Lord Grimm and moved almost all of his 10th server personal storage to the guilds. "You can sell some stuff from here too," Ye Xiu said. "Okay." Chen Guo nodded her head. Guild storages didn't only have equipment. They had materials, potions, anything. By providing all of these resources to the guild members, the guild could show the benefits of being in a guild. However, our high-leveled equipment can't only come from buying. We have to create an elite team and have them fill up the guild storage's upper levels. Ye Xiu said, "I can do this stuff. We have a few veterans in the guild. I'll pick out a few and see if we can create a few elite teams." Chen Guo said. Ye Xiu nodded his head. He looked around. For now, there wasn't anything else to do, so he closed the guild interface. The Aquamarine Knight had dropped several material, including the Aquamarine. Of course, Ye Xiu kept the Aquamarine for himself. After all, it was the reason he had come back to the 10th server. This type of special material was almost always dropped. Wild bosses only spawned once a week. If the drop rate was too low, no one would be interested in the boss. As a result, wild bosses often dropped orange equipment and rare materials. If none of them dropped, then something else dropped. Luck. After pocketing the Aquamarine, Ye Xiu didn't hurry back to the heavenly domain to upgrade his equipment. There were still a few things that he needed to do in the normal server before he returned. Even though he didn't gain any experience here, there were still a few required quests that he had to complete. These quests rewarded bonus skill points or extra stats. Ye Xiu had piled up quite a few level 50-54 quests. He was already here, so he might as well clear them out. He searched up a guide and went to complete the quests. These quests weren't difficult for Ye Xiu, but Chen Guo seemed excited, as if she were having even more fun than watching Ye Xiu battle in PvP. Glory had such a large world. With a guide, Ye Xiu didn't even need to move his hand sometimes, making it quite boring. Finishing up all of the required quests took up most of his day. Ye Xiu was doing these quests for the end rewards, but Lord Grimm wouldn't get any experience from any of the previous segments of the quests, making it was all very tedious. Just when he finished all of these tedious quests, Steamed Bun Invasion kindly invited him to dungeon together. Ye Xiu felt like it had been a long time since he had last played with this little bro, so they partied up and dungeoned together for some equipment. The majority of Day in the 10th server had gone to contributing to the guild. The guild's storage had filled up quite a lot now. None of them wanted any of the equipment dropped from the dungeons, so the equipment all went to the guild instead. Even though they were only blue equipments still had their advantages. They required fewer guild contribution points and usually made for quite decent equipment too. As for Chen Guo, after leaving some of the materials in the guild storage, she went to the market to sell the rest. She wasn't in a hurry and sold them off in small amounts. She didn't bother with the guilds or studios who bought materials in bulk at a low price. The big guilds saw Chen Guo's chasing haze selling materials and grinded their teeth in frustration. Who was chasing haze? All of them knew. Guild Happy had spies, after all. She wasn't high-leveled, but she had a lot of authority in the guild. Where did she suddenly get all of those materials? The guilds immediately knew. Lord Grimm had earned it from them. He had earned it from them, and now they had to buy them back. Just thinking about it made them flush with anger. However, materials were important to the clubs. If there were materials available to buy, then they had to get them, but when they went over to buy it from her, the price was high. No matter how high their priorities were, the guilds couldn't help but hesitate. If they bought their own materials back at such a high price, their faces would explode from anger. They just couldn't accept it. Helpless, they could only watch as these materials were sold off at a high price. Chen Guo wasn't in a hurry at all. She sold, while looking around the marketplace, and bought equipment either with materials or with money she earned from selling the materials. Thus, the two sides busily worked for the entire day. When they checked up on the storage at night, they saw that the storage had changed greatly. The storage didn't only have the items they had put in initially. The guild members began understanding the benefits of the guild storage and made their own contributions to it. Potions, food. The guild storage was immediately filled with many subclass-created items. These items could be traded in for contribution points and taken out with contribution points. Once the items in the guild storage began circulating, it would gradually move onto the right track. Later on, no one would need to manage it anymore. It would operate smoothly on its own. The guild just had to make sure there were high-end goods inside. These items were difficult for normal players to get on their own. Only by putting in these types of goods into the guild storage would players make contributions. While earning guild contribution points, the player would be adding to the storage, which would circulate around. A guild could only grow prosperous with a strong guild storage as a foundation. The King's Avatar Volume 5 Ace Showdown Chapter 529 Chapter 529 Spies, Contributions. Comrades, work hard. I'll be waiting for you in the heavenly domain. When he finished his one-day visit to the 10th server, Ye Xiu encouraged the players of his guild. The players laughed in response. None of them really took it too seriously. Only Steamed Bun Invasion, being such a strange person, answered sincerely, "Boss, rest easy. I've got the 10th server covered. Good luck, everyone." Ye Xiu logged out. His return to the 10th server for just one short day turned Guild Happy upside down. The establishment of the guild storage is a symbol. Without a mature guild storage, then the guild would still be a regular guild just for fun. However, with a storage, the guild would become more attractive to the players and become more cohesive. The change in Guild Happy was quickly reported back to the guild leaders by the spies. Still, nothing was as important as Lord Grimm going back to Heavenly Domain. Upon hearing the news, the guild masters felt that their holiday was finally there. Guild Happy's storage was too easy to deal with. The guild masters were all snickering in the dark. "Lord Grimm, no matter how godly you are, you're too careless this time." Next day, when Lord Grimm logged back in, Ye Xiu was already back in Heavenly Domain. On the other hand, Chen Guo knew that building the storage was an important step for Guild Happy. There was some management required at the beginning, especially since she hadn't sold out the materials that Ye Xiu had given her. She sold them in small amounts instead of in bundles, so selling all of them out was going to take a few days. Right after she logged in and opened up the management window of the storage, she received a system message. She jumped in surprise when she glanced at the message and called Ye Xiu. "It's too fast. Some people already have 6,000 contribution points. They're going to get the desert badge soon. What should I do?" Chi Guo asked Ye Xiu. Ye Xiu tilted his head, glanced at Chen Guo and smiled, as expected. To be able to get 6,000 contribution point overnight, they must have donated a lot of things. Chen Guo concluded while running to the guild management place in the city center to check on the guild storage. Unsurprisingly, the storage became much more filled. As for the donation records, expectedly, the players with 6,000 contribution points each had a long list. "Haha, all of these are spies," Ye Xiu explained. To have 6,000 contribution points in one night, they must have one of the big guild's support. They're trying to cheat away our treasure, Ye Xiu continued. Oh, Chen Guo immediately understood why Ye Xiu set the desert badge as a non-auto-distributed award. She also realized that Ye Xiu had expected many to gain 6,000 contribution points so quickly. "Rotten bastards, let's kick them all out." Chen Guo was outraged yet excited. Their scheme had been seen through. If they get kicked out now, then it would mean that they donated items and helped Guild Happy to grow for nothing. Just thinking about Theses people's reactions after they got kicked out filled Chen Guo with happiness. Don't. There are definitely spies, but there might be a few special cases. Kicking them all out might end up punishing the wrong people. Ye Xiu replied. Then what do? We can't drag it out forever. The system has a time limit. If no player with the authority distributed the reward within the time frame, then the system would automatically distribute it. Who currently has the highest level in the guild? Ye Xiu asked. Tang Ru's soft mist, Chen Guo answered. Give her some materials so that she can rack up 6,000 contribution points. Let her take the desert badge. Then send out an announcement. Say that there were a lot people who sent in requests, so the guild gave the matter some consideration and awarded it to the player with the highest level soft mist. This way, there shouldn't be any objections. Ye Xiu laid out the plan. Shameless, Chen Guo exclaimed, then followed with a question. What if someone says he or she was there first? Nonsense. If order mattered in the first place, why would we set the distribution system as mandatory? If someone asked you with this nonsense, then educate him properly. Ye Xiu replied. Chen Guo was speechless after that. She found Tang Ru and explained the plan. Tang Ru had no objections against it whatsoever, making Chen Guo feel that the girl had truly found the wrong teacher. She didn't learn anything honorable. Chen Guo asked Tang Ru how many points she still needed, and answer shocked her. You only need this tiny amount, Chen Guo asked again. Tang Ru suddenly understood. No wonder he asked me to donate all of the items from yesterday's dungeon. So you had this all planned out. Chen Guo turned her gaze onto Ye Xiu. It's only to be expected. If it was a well-developed big guild, then this kind of trick is totally useless. There are a lot of things in the storage, so it wouldn't hurt the guild too much. However, we just started. If they took the desert badge like this, then it would really be a loss of us, so I took some precautions. Ye Xiu elaborated. While he was talking, Chen Guo met up with Tang Ru in the game. After she got the materials, Tang Ru soon also had 6,000 contribution points. She then proceeded to take the desert badge. Whether the award was distributed by the system or a player wasn't shown unless someone with authority willed it. To Tang Ru, who had 6,000 contribution points, the emblem was already unlocked. It was only when she tried to take it did the system notify her that a request had been submitted, and there would be a reply within 48 hours no matter what. Chen Guo received the message and acted right away. The desert badge was given to Tang Ru without any delay. Chen Guo also sent out an announcement in the guild. Just like Ye Xiu said, it reasoned that due to the numerous requests, the badge was given to the player of the highest level. You should also urge everyone to learn from these people. Don't forget to encourage people to level up. There are benefits to having a high level. Soft Mist is a perfect example. Ye Xiu instructed Chen Guo to add more content to the announcement. When the announcement was posted, a lot of people among the request list found themselves choking. After waiting restlessly for an entire night, they couldn't have dreamed of this result. These people were, naturally, the spies from other guilds. If they were the regular players, level priority would have been a perfectly sensible reason. In addition, the contribution points they gained were still useful, so they didn't lose anything in donating items. It was only the spies who were dying in bitterness because they had helped Guild Happy grow for utterly nothing in return. When the news traveled back to the guild masters, all that changed was an increased number of bitter people. Was Lord Grimm careless? Apparently not. It was them who were careless. A mandatory distribution and a level priority were all it took to cheat more items out of them. How about we let our guys hurry up on leveling so we can surpass that Soft Mist? Then we can get that desert badge easily. Someone was still trying, unwilling to give up. What kind of idiot are you? This situation is proof that they were prepared for these types of tricks. Trying more schemes is simply a waste of time. The man who proposed the idea got scolded right away. Why don't I take equipment out? Then you guys can steal it, a spy suggested. Wouldn't that expose your identity? Boss, based on the current situation, do I look like I'm not exposed? The spy lamented. A long silence settled upon the participating guild leaders and spies. They realized that, no matter what they do, they wouldn't be able to do any harm to Guild Happy. As for Guild Happy, besides the bitter group, other people had no disagreement against giving the desert badge to the highest-leveled Soft Mist. Instead, they were very curious about the people who got 6,000 contribution points at this extraordinary speed and went to visit these people. The poor spies were still worrying with their own guilds like idiots when the crowd from Guild Happy came, praising them like heroes. There were no words that could describe their conflicted hearts in that moment. Ye Xiu's Lord Grimm had long returned to heavenly domain. He didn't pay any more attention to the matter after instructing Chen Guo on how to fix the mess. He put aquamarine and the other materials that Mo Qian helped to gather all into the equipment editor. Ye Xiu was ready to upgrade the level 50 of 1000 Chance umbrella. For this upgrade, even the window of the editor was different from before. The parts are no longer just the simple parts like the sword, spear, rifle, and the umbrella. The tedious blueprint separated 1000 Chance umbrella into tiny individual components to be reassembled later. These parts all had templates from the earlier trials. Ye Xiu checked every materials carefully, replicating them one by one. However, when the only material left was the aquamarine, Ye Xiu had ran out of templates. There wasn't one for the component that the aquamarine was supposed to be molded into. Ye Xiu sighed softly. In fact, 1000 Chance umbrella wasn't a completely successful weapon in the first place. Otherwise, instead of a level 5 prototype, what should have been left from the research years ago would be a level 50,000 Chance umbrella. The reason behind that year's failure was the problem with the last material. Trials after trials failed on the last component. Still, every failure means one step closer to success. This is because they had already determined all of the possible materials. With every failure, they could eliminate a possibility. Aquamarine was the only material left that they hadn't tried. Regretfully, before they could carry out the final trial, glory killed the brilliance behind the 1000 Chance umbrella's existence. Now, So many years after that, Ye Xiu was finally here to complete this unfinished step from that time. Unable to calm himself, he went through 3 cigarettes before he returned to the room. After taking a deep breath, Ye Xiu settled himself in front of the computer. Without a template, he needed to forge the component himself. The performance required wasn't as complicated as combat in the game, but it had no tolerance for the slightest mistake. Even the smallest error would destroy the material completely. Otherwise, why would people call the equipment editor and bottomless void for money? So it begins. Ye Xiu noted in his heart, clicked open the polishing window for materials and put the aquamarine into the slot. The King's Avatar Volume 5 Ace Showdown. Thank you for listening to the story on KevinAudio.com. Chapter 530. Chapter 530. Level 50,000 Chance Umbrella. Chen Guo saw what Ye Xiu was going to do. Equipment editor. All Glory players had access to it, but very few knew how to actually use it. Chen Guo had obviously tried it before, but she just didn't get it. In the end, her attempts only resulted in wasted materials and equipment. The equipment editor really wasn't complicated. It's just a tool like a pen. Everyone knows how to use a pen. However, some people could use it to write novels and some could use it to draw pictures. The key is what one could do with the tool. Chen Guo had stopped at the using the pen stage. As for creating literature or drawings, she was just going in blind. In the beginning, Ye Xiu simply used a template and placed the materials accordingly. As long as he had the correct materials, everything else was simple. But now, after using the polisher, Chen Guo's eyes lit up. This time, Ye Xiu would truly be using the equipment editor to polish a material. Even though Chen Guo couldn't use the equipment editor, she at least knew that he couldn't be careless here, so she didn't say anything and only gave furtive glances to see the situation. Ye Xiu put in the aquamarine into the polisher and immediately began working. Cut, drill, string, smooth. Chen Guo had played around with these functions before, but she had just been doing it randomly to a piece of material. On the other hand, Ye Xiu clearly had a plan and goal. He gradually shaped the aquamarine. It couldn't be shaped using a simple circle or rectangle function. It would be shaped according to the operator's desires until it became a completed component. It had a core for structural stability and places to link together with other components. Movable area, immovable areas, areas with limited movements. The structure of the aquamarine became more and more complex and delicate. All of this was done by Ye Xiu through the polisher. Simple techniques produced miraculous results. So miraculous that Chen Guo even had a hard time believing it. Half an hour. The polishing for the aquamarine took a full half an hour. When Ye Xiu suddenly stopped, Chen Guo snapped out of her daze. She had been watching out of the corner of her eye for the full half an hour. When she came out of her daze, her eyes felt a bit sore. Watching out of the corner of one's eyes for a long time is very tiring. When she saw Ye Xiu stop operating the polisher, she waited a moment before asking, "Is it done?" Ye Xiu nodded his head. "It's done." Then he took out the polished aquamarine and put it with the other materials. He opened up the interface for adding the materials into the weapon. The 1,000 Chance umbrella's many parts as well as the dazzling lineup of materials lay there. Ye Xiu didn't hurry up and begin. He took a rest while opening up a document from his email. Chen Guo looked and saw it was the blueprints for the 1,000 Chance umbrella. She immediately turned her head back to her screen. This sort of thing was very secretive in the Glory scene. It was like a secret martial arts book. It wasn't right to look at it without the owner's permission. "It doesn't matter. If you want to look, you can look." Ye Xiu smiled. "Can I really? When I was polishing the materials, you didn't avoid looking at them either. What's so different about this?" Ye Xiu said. Chen Guo stared blankly and immediately felt very embarrassed. "I forgot. I'm sorry." Chen Guo sincerely apologized. If she couldn't look at the blueprint, then it meant she couldn't look at the upgrade process either. Chen Guo had forgotten about this, but it was also because she didn't have any intentions of stealing his knowledge or anything like that. I said it doesn't matter, Ye Xiu said. You're going to assemble the 1,000-chance umbrella. Chen Guo felt too ashamed to sneakily watch, so she changed the subject. Yeah, I'm going to take a look at the blueprint again, Ye Xiu said. Good luck, Chen Guo said. She had already turned her head back. This time, she wouldn't glance at him working at all. Ye Xiu smiled and didn't say anything. He didn't care if she looked, and he obviously didn't care if she didn't look. He carefully studied the 1,000-chance umbrella's level 50 blueprint again. With the 1,000-chance umbrella's complexity, learning the flowchart for it was impossible. Ye Xiu branded the theory and its applications to the umbrella into his mind. Remembering the fundamentals would save time and lead to better results. After reviewing the flowchart, Ye Xiu didn't take out a cigarette to relax and quickly began assembling the level 50 umbrella. The room became extremely quiet. There would usually be some noise from Chen Guo and Tang Ru playing the game, but at this moment, no sound could be heard from them. They weren't trying not to make any noise. They deliberately gave Ye Xiu an environment where he could fully focus. Ka ka, ka ka. In the room, only Ye Xiu's mouse could be heard, one step at a time without any margin for error. After a short moment, it was time to put the aquamarine into it. Unsuitable materials could be polished into the correct shape, but when placed into the desired equipment, the equipment would fail. If one were unlucky, the equipment would be damaged in the process. If one were lucky, the equipment could still maintain its form. However, the equipment would soon break after a few uses. With the 1,000-chance umbrella's complex parts, if a single component failed, everything would fail. The creator had analyzed the structure of each part separately. The results of the analysis appeared in the previous forms of the 1,000-chance umbrella. This saved a lot of effort in manufacturing it. However, this couldn't be done for the completed form. Ye Xiu didn't hesitate when putting in the aquamarine and accurately planted it into the weapon. A light, comfortable sound rang in his ears. It was a signal for a successful placement. Ye Xiu didn't stop to take a pause. The aquamarine was only one part and not the end. He continued according to the flowchart. He spent another half an hour on assembling it all together. After hearing Ye Xiu let out a sigh of relief, Chen Guo stopped herself from turning her head to look until she heard Ye Xiu personally say, "It's done." Was it a success? Chen Guo turned her head over. Even Tang Ru stole a glance. "I'll have to try it out to see," Ye Xiu said. He exited the equipment editor and returned to the game. Chen Guo anxiously looked. At the same time, she was somewhat curious about the wonders of this level 50,000-chance umbrella. Who knew that when Ye Xiu went back to the game and picked up his 1,000-chance umbrella, he didn't look for any monsters. He just swiped at the air a few times and then nodded his head. "It's a success." "That's done." "It's done," Ye Xiu exclaimed. "Just a few swipes. You're certain there's no problem?" Chen Guo doubted. "It sounds like you were hoping there were problems," Ye Xiu asked. "No, it's just isn't your inspection too careless?" Chen Guo questioned. "Ah, that's what you mean. What did you think I would do?" Ye Xiu swiped at the air some more. "See, there aren't any loose parts. It's a big success. No loose parts." Chen Guo was considering whether she should go into her heavenly domain account and run over to admire the 1,000-chance umbrella's might. But if the end result was just no loose parts, where was there to admire? "Let me see the stats," Chen Guo said. Ye Xiu opened up his weapon's profile. Chen Guo looked and saw a lot of words. If she recalled correctly in the beginning, the 1,000-chance umbrella didn't have anything except for the basic stats. Even though the stats surpassed an orange weapon at the same level, without any additional stats, this weapon wouldn't be very good. It would be at the same level as the lowest-ranked white equipment, which had no additional stats. But this 1,000-chance umbrella had quite a few additional stats. The 1,000-chance umbrella was currently in its umbrella form. It had 535 physical attack and 535 magic attack. It also added 10 to stamina, strength, intelligence, and spirit. The same magic and physical attack and plus 10 to all 4 main stats. With just this, Chen Guo could tell that this 1000 chance umbrella could be considered as a pro-level weapon. This was a feature of the scepter which knights often used. Apart from the plus 10 to the 4 main stats, Chen Guo continued to look down and thought of another issue. Do all of the 1000 chance umbrella forms have different stats? Yeah. Ye Xiu said, and had the 1000 chance umbrella switch to the spear form. It added plus 41 to strength. Then what are your overall stats? Chen Guo cried out in alarm. Ye Xiu was a bit startled but quickly figured out why Chen Guo was so alarmed. He opened up his character profile. It seems pretty normal. Chen Guo hesitated. After all, when facing a god, she was afraid she misinterpreted something because her skill level wasn't good enough. Right when she finished, Lord Grimm's stats suddenly changed. His strength decreased and his intelligence increased. This, Chen Guo looked. Lord Grimm's 1000 chance umbrella had changed forms. She immediately understood. It's not that every weapon gives you permanent stats. Of course not. Ye Xiu said, the stats depends on the form of the weapon being used. You can't have all of the forms' additional stats add together. Chen Guo felt like if that could happen, then it would be incredible. Wasn't it a single weapon? All the stats were there, so perhaps there was a way to sum them all up. If that was possible, then why would I need any additional stats? My base attack would be ridiculous, Ye Xiu said. Oh, Chen Guo didn't say anything. Sure enough, her imagination had gone too far. The King's Avatar Volume 5 Ace Showdown Chapter 531. Chen Guo dreamed about the unrealistic possibility, then looked at 1000 chance umbrella's stats, finding it to be rather ordinary. No matter what, 1000 chance umbrella was only a level 50 weapon. It could not shock a player who had seen a level 70 weapon too greatly. Still, the brilliance of it was not in its stats, but in its unpredictable nature. Chen Guo knew this well. Okay, let's hurry up on leveling now, Ye Xiu said. Lord Grimm was currently level 54. Once he reaches 55, the dungeons would be open to him. There are countless level 55 dungeons in Heavenly Domain. On top of that, these dungeons have more experience points than the dungeons from the regular servers. Once he reaches level 55 and starting to use the dungeons, his level was bound to skyrocket. Okay, hurry up, Chen Guo said, and turned to manage things in Guild Happy in the 10th server. Ye Xiu resupplied Lord Grimm a little in the main city. Just as he was leaving for the wilderness, a stream of messages came rushing down. The alert kept blinking endlessly as the sender continued sending messages. It was none other than Wei Chen, whose windward formation just joined Ye Xiu's friend list 2 days ago. Where are you? What do you want? Come here. Hurry up. Talk to me. Wei Chen burned his Cosmo and a storm of messages came crashing down. Ye Xiu read the text one by one and asked, What do you want? Poison Fang Swamp, location 27,586, 45,866. Hurry up, Wei Chen answered immediately. Level 65 leveling area, why should I go there? I can't get any experience points. Ye Xiu spoke. Stop being stupid, hurry up, Wei Chen yelled out. Ye Xiu was helpless. Lord Grimm teleported to a main city near Poison Fang Swamp. Right as he set foot outside of the teleportation circle, a group of players from Herb Garden came running past. Lord Grimm hid to the side hurriedly. In the Heavenly Domain, the main cities weren't safe areas. It depended on whether the character had any fame in that city. Lord Grimm came to Heavenly Domain when he was only level 50, so he couldn't take any quests. Even killing monsters for him meant overcoming a big level gap. He had no fame to speak of in the main city of level 55 area, let alone the city of level 56 area. A character gains fame through quests. Without a sufficient level, where could Lord Grimm possibly find quests? Therefore, to Lord Grimm, The current heavenly domain didn't have a safe area. Thus, a sudden encounter with people of any guild was not to be taken lightly for Ye Xiu. Apparently, this group of herb garden was too busy rushing to pay attention to their surroundings. They sped off out of the city the moment they were out of the teleportation circle. Ye Xiu knew that the teleportation circle was too dangerous for him, so he let his character stay far away from it. Lord Grimm quickly took another route, even though he and the people from Herb Garden were essentially going to the same place. Seeing how rushed the club's people were, Ye Xiu was more confident about Wei Chen's purpose for calling him over. Undoubtedly, the field boss in Poison Fang Swamp refreshed. At the same time, Wei Chen's Death's Hand was currently level 60. To advance, he needed level 65 materials. It looked like one of them came from Poison Fang Swamp. Unlike the normal servers, Ye Xiu had a clearer memory of the heavenly domain. Even after he became a professional player, Ye Xiu still visited heavenly domain for fun from time to time. On top of that, when he became a professional player, the max level wasn't level 70 yet. During his career so far, Glory changed the level cap a couple of times, so the professional players had to level up their characters in the heavenly domain. Poison Fang Swamp's field boss, Swamp Hunter Lepu, is a mix between assassin and thief who lurked unpredictably around Poison Fang Swamp. Of course, unpredictable was an adjective given to the character by the system setting. To the players, every field boss was unpredictable because their spawn was too random. However, the bosses were always found not long after spawning. Even as Wei Chen was texting Ye Xiu, Herb Garden's people were heading towards the scene. Herb Garden wasn't the only one. Just as Lord Grimm was rushing over, the guilds that had arrived already numbered 4. Herb Garden, Misty Castle, Tyrannical Ambition, and Samsara all belonged to clubs. This was truly a close one. Ye Xiu have no idea what kind of schemes Wei Chen used this time to gain an advantage on the big guilds. How rare. Looks like Wei Chen really spent a lot of effort on Swamp Hunter Lepu. Ye Xiu thought to himself, not daring to lower his guard just yet. He ran towards the location Wei Chen had provided with incredible speed. He expected the place to be a storm of blades and spells, locked in a fierce battle with the boss as Wei Chen tries to kill the boss before the guilds arrive. Ye Xiu did not expect to find the ominous silence when he arrived at 27,586, 45,866. Just as he was planning to ask Wei Chen through a message, the mud splashed in a puddle near him. A dirty, poisonous fly jumped up, lunging toward Lord Grimm with its sting. What extraordinary reflexes Ye Xiu had. Without even closing the chat window, he tapped out the command. With a silvery flash, Thousand Chance umbrella folded into a sword. With a sword draw, the fly was smacked down in midair. Without any hesitation, the fly flapped its wings, flying towards Ye Xiu right after it landed. These kinds of monsters in Poison Fang Swamp held the top place on the list of least favorite monsters in Glory. Its small size and quick movements, as well as its tendency to hide in the swamp, made it hard to kill for any class. Because of this, Poison Fang Swamp was one of the most extremely disliked leveling areas. Still, in front of a god like Ye Xiu, what could a lowly monster do? Although the fly got back into the air pretty quickly, Lord Grimm's sword was faster. Ye Xiu didn't even bother using Thousand Chance Umbrella's stats enhancement. With his bare hands, he smacked the fly into a corpse. Excellent skills. A voice rang out nearby. The owner of the voice was none other than Wei Chen himself. Based on his muddy equipments, Wei Chen looked like he just appeared out of a mud puddle. "Where's the boss?" Ye Xiu asked. "There, be careful," Wei Chen warned. "How can I be careful?" Ye Xiu retorted. They were already deep inside Poison Fang Swamp. Mud puddles of all sizes were everywhere. Even if one knew which puddle hid poisonous flies, avoiding encounters were still impossible. And you call yourself a god? Useless. Wei Chen's windward formation led the way. He fished something out of his pocket, lit it, and threw it onto the ground. A thin blue smoke rippled out into the surroundings. Everywhere it went, poisonous flies jumped out of the mud like frightened birds and flew away. Ye Xiu wanted to use an insect-repelling smoke, but that was a level 70 item. This is where Wei Chen had lost his standards, using such an avoidable thing to label Ye Xiu as useless. They didn't walk far from the location provided by Wei Chen. When Ye Xiu saw that Wei Chen had actually bothered to come personally, an ominous feeling rose in Ye Xiu's heart. How could you walk away from the boss? You're not going to tell me you don't have any plans in mind? Ye Xiu questioned. As expected of a god, looks like you are crafty enough to foresee my clever scheme, Wei Chen praised. What's the situation now? Ye Xiu asked. There are 5 guilds already. No one dares to move yet, they're all still scheming. Wei Chen said. What's your plan? Ye Xiu continued. My plan was waiting for you to come over, that was all. Now you're here, we can start to plan the next step. Come on, don't be shy. Wei Chen's windward formation stepped around a few trees, finally stopped, and called Ye Xiu over. Lord Grimm walked over and saw a group of people with familiar ids. They appeared to be the group that fought with him just days before. Ye Xiu greeted the group causally, and the group returned the greetings. There were no noteworthy feelings involved. Everyone was facing forward. What was happening in the front then? Ye Xiu turned Lord Grimm's camera and found himself immediately outraged. There were the players from all the big guilds in the front. Swamp Hunter Leipu wasn't even in sight. What was in sight was the wall of people built by the guilds that surrounded Swamp Hunter Leipu. They were so far out that it would be completely logically to call themselves spectators. Yet here, Ye Xiu thought Wei Chen had grasped some advantages. Based on the current situation, they would call themselves lucky if the guilds didn't start attacking them as kill stealers. Are you here to kill the boss, or are you here just as a kill stealer? Ye Xiu was starting to doubt Wei Chen's motivation. He felt he had need to clarify this question. Kill steal? Shameless. As a god, do you still have any standard? How could you possibly think of kill stealing? Of course we're here for the boss. Unless we truly can't kill the boss, then maybe we'll resort to kill stealing, Wei Chen retorted. With this situation, please teach me how to kill the boss. Ye Xiu ridiculed. No, you should teach me. Let your despicableness help me, Wei Chen answered sincerely. How about all of you go out and run around naked? That should get everyone's attention. Then I sneak in and kill the boss with one strike. What do you think about it? Ye Xiu asked. Running around with no equipment is no problem. The problem is how are you going to insta-kill the boss? Wei Chen replied with a question. I have my ways, you can lead your people to run around naked now. Ye Xiu answered. Wait a moment. Let's check on the other's status first. Wei Chen agreed. You've been here for a while now, are you done yet? Ye Xiu was starting to feel a little exasperated. The situation is constantly changing. Look, there's a new guild now, Wei Chen continued. I saw 4 on my way here, Ye Xiu added. Are they same as the ones before us? Wei Chen asked. 2 of them aren't, Ye Xiu replied. So 8 guilds are already here. Awesome. I say, why don't we go back first? Wei Chen suggested. You should have done that a long while ago. In the end, despite what they said, their characters didn't move backwards half an inch. As a matter of fact, they even stepped forward a little to see the situation more clearly. FCK, can't you lower yourself a little? Don't expose your id. Your name is like SHT these days. It attracts flies, Wei Chen cursed. Hello, fly. Ye Xiu said to Wei Chen. The King's Avatar Volume 5 Ace Showdown Chapter 532 Chapter 532 A Peaceful Way in Poison Fang Swamp. Players from Herb Garden, Misty Castle, Tyrannical Ambition, Samsara, Excellent Dynasty, Blue Brook Guild, Blossom Valley, and Void Walk wandered around on the lookout. The guilds discovered the boss at different times. The first guild to see the boss weren't stupid, but they couldn't kill the boss in time. After the other guilds noticed the boss, the first guild immediately gave up on attacking the boss, and the situation resulted in a deadlock. None of the 8 guilds dared to act rashly. They were naturally waiting for their guild leaders to make a decision. A level 65 wild boss wasn't a small matter. The guild leaders personally set out to handle it. When the 8 guild leaders gathered together, they felt somewhat awkward. Even though they were still competitors, everyone had gotten closer due to recent events. The guild leaders had even assembled the day before to curse at Lord Grimm's activities in the 10th server. Now they had assembled again, but this time, instead of fighting shoulder to shoulder, they would be at each other's throats. Although the guild leaders knew this would happen, it still felt a bit uncomfortable. In the end, allying together to deal with Lord Grimm was a different matter. A friend in need is a friend indeed. They had suffered whenever they countered Lord Grimm. This shared suffering cultivated a feeling similar to working together to take advantage of another. That bestarred Lord Grimm isn't going to come over and make a mess, is he? Someone saw a familiar crowd gather around and couldn't help but turn the subject to Lord Grimm. When he said this, the others gave expressions of approval. I just looked. Lord Grimm is online. We have to defend against him. That guy just returned from snatching the Aquamarine Knight in the 10th server. It seems like today, it's very likely he's fixed his attention on our swamp hunter Leipu. In the 10th server, he has a guild, over here. Lulan Slash, someone suggested. Even if he doesn't try and steal the boss, he might go scrap picking with his comrade Deception, another person guessed. We must take precautions. After discussing it, everyone nodded their heads. They had reached a consensus in regards to Lord Grimm. However, their friendly and peaceful discussion had come to an end. Once they reached an agreement with the Lord Grimm issue, everyone was in an awkward situation again. Should we scout around the perimeters to see if Lord Grimm is here? Someone proposed. This proposal was unanimously agreed upon, and the mood became harmonious again. At this moment, Blue Brook Guild's leader Changing Spring couldn't hold it back anymore and stood out. Everyone, is there any point in lying to ourselves? The discussion immediately fell silent. Indeed, they were talking and talking, avoiding the issue of stealing the boss and using Lord Grimm to keep the peace. It was certainly somewhat deceitful. Even if they allied together to face Lord Grimm, they had to face the boss eventually. Not just today either. Fighting bosses was one way for the guilds to compete against each other. Now that Changing Spring had directly burst the bubble, the other guild leaders felt somewhat embarrassed. Tyrannical ambitions, Jiang Yu stood out. Everyone, Changing Spring is correct. We can't deceive ourselves, but I think everyone understands our current feelings. With such a strong opponent, disputes between each other will give our opponent an opportunity. I have a proposal. For this boss, how about we find a peaceful way of resolving the situation? A peaceful way. After these words came out, many of them objected, because in the history of fighting for bosses, a peaceful way was a phrase used too many times. Whenever it was proposed, people would use it as a cover-up for darker schemes. Nowadays, everyone had developed a resistance to these words. To everyone, the words "a peaceful way" was the same as "I'm about to take a go at it." An experienced guild leader like Jiang Yu understood this. He immediately followed up. A peaceful way sounds like a joke, no? Ha ha, but I believe everyone understands logic. Today, the reason we're able to take this step is because of a prerequisite. Lord Grimm, Heavenly Justice. I doubt anyone wants to see these two grow. Right now, if we go into another large battle over a boss, we'll only be giving them more and more opportunities. In particular, we don't know if they already have the strength to infiltrate into our ranks. When we compete, we don't know if their people will turn around and stab us in the backs. Then tell us, what peaceful way do we have? Blossom Valley's guild leader Blooming Blossom asked. Jiang Yu smiled. Fight. We'll still have to fight, but we won't have to fight such a large battle. We'll go to the arena, fight a few rounds, and determine who the boss belongs to. How about it? Not a bad idea. I agree. Changing Spring said. It's not like we haven't heard of this method before, but who can guarantee that the losers won't go back on their words and use this tactic to get rid of an opponent? Misty Castle's Misty Locke said in an unhappy manner. It seems like he had fallen for this type of plan before. At worst, we can record our agreement and post it online. We can have the people on the internet supervise it. I don't think anyone will feel wrong doing that, Jiang Yu said. These club guilds placed a great amount of importance on their reputation. If everyone could see the agreement, no one would go back on their word. Once Jiang Yu said this, no one else spoke up. In the end, Jiang Yu added, in order to stop anyone harboring ill intentions, the guilds who lose in the arena will protect the winner to prevent anyone from disturbing them. How about it? Everyone listened. This was to stop anyone from sending out open accounts to cause a disturbance. If everyone supervised the whole thing, that plan wouldn't work. Does anyone have any objections? Jiang Yu asked. I accept, Misty Locke said. If this really works, then I suggest we do the same every time. That way we can walk towards a positive competition. We won't need to keep plotting schemes all day and simply compete with strength. I also accept. Blooming Blossom nodded his head. I also accepted. Void Walks West Riding Wind said. It wasn't without reason that these three happily accepted, because compared to the three great guilds and even the recently declining Excellent Dynasty, their strength was somewhat lacking. In a competition for bosses, they rarely won, usually because they noticed the boss first and killed it before others found out. As soon as another guild contested for it, they had little confidence in winning. However, with Jiang Yu's suggestion, it would be a PvP between elite teams. Their overall strength couldn't compare to those guilds, but their elite teams weren't any weaker. Compared to a contest of overall strength, they had a greater chance of winning. Moreover, if this became the norm, everyone would only need to focus on strengthening their elite teams, which would require less resources. After all, to get strong equipment for a few characters, whether they had 1,000 resources or 5,000 resources, didn't matter too much, because they wouldn't even need to use 100 resources. Those three guilds didn't object. At this moment, Samsara's guild leader, 3 World 6 Paths, questioned, how are we going to determine the winners in the arena? Individual competition, group arena, team competition, or war? There were several modes in PvP that the players could freely choose between. Unlike in pro competitions, the group arena didn't necessarily have to be 3v3, nor did the team competition have to be 5v5 with one sub in glory. The numbers could be decided by the players. When one side had more than 10 players, it wouldn't be called a team competition anymore, but a battlefield. A 100v100 battle would be a war. The pro scene definitely couldn't play these modes. Have a team train 100 pro players. That would be insane. Okay, like 3 Worlds said, what mode should we use? Jiang Yu asked. We're all under the club, so we should just do it according to the pro rules. 3 Worlds 6 Paths answered immediately. He wouldn't agree to a war. If the scale became larger, then overall strength would be more important. He was afraid Jiang Yu had thought of this, which was why he had intentionally proposed the idea. Misty Locke, West Riding Wind, and Blooming Blossom naturally stood with 3 Worlds 6 Paths. They hadn't asked about it before because they hadn't thought of it. As soon as 3 Worlds made a suggestion, they immediately supported his idea. I have no objections. What about everyone else? Jiang Yu didn't hesitate to reply. Herb Garden, Blue Brook Guild, and Excellent Dynasty remained. This type of method forced them to give up their advantage. It would put them on the same footing as the other guilds. Tyrannical Ambition might agree, but the others might not. Among these three, Changing Spring was the first to accept Jiang Yu's proposal and didn't immediately express his approval. The other two saw this and also approved, seeing the general trend. However, the two guilds only said, "Then I guess I'll go with it for now." Their words implied they would do it this time, but whether or not they continued doing it in the future would depend on the situation. The King's Avatar Volume 5 Ace Showdown Chapter 533, Chapter 533. If there aren't any opportunities, create your own this time. The guild leaders personally led the teams to fight for the boss, so they didn't need to go to the trouble and open up a discussion group outside of the game. Everyone gathered together in the middle of the circle and quickly came to an agreement. It was too bad for Ye Xiu and Wei Chen said. The two pro-level players couldn't see or hear anything. They shamelessly snuck into the circle and tried to eavesdrop, but the guilds suddenly stopped moving. They clearly weren't going to fight the boss and were still negotiating with each other. How boring, what's there to talk about? In the end, they'll each have their own plans. Such a waste of time. Wei Chen spoke in an unhappy voice. It seems a bit different this time, Ye Xiu said. How? Normally, the negotiations are a part of their plan. They should have already begun dispatching their troops by now. However, look at their troops. No one is moving. There haven't been any ambushes or any reinforcements coming. Doesn't this look like a real negotiation? Ye Xiu said. No way, they've been fighting for so many years. Why would they suddenly have a change in heart? Wei Chen didn't believe it. The two continued guessing. The discussion between the 8 guild leaders finally concluded. In the end, they went with Jiang Yu's suggestion. The top guilds like Herb Garden and Excellent Dynasty left room for discussion in the future though. The slightly less powerful guilds like Misty Castle and Blossom Valley hoped this plan would stay forever. After drawing up the plan, the 8 guilds immediately signed an agreement and had the public be the judges. Then, they made an announcement in their respective guild forums as well as their guild's web page as proof. After making the arrangements, everyone returned to the game and prepared to enter the arena to decide who the boss belonged to. Chen Guo had her materials displayed out on the streets. She didn't even need to be at her keyboard to do this, so she wasn't busy right now. From time to time, she would go back to the game and take a look, but most of the time she was browsing the forums. A post suddenly caught her eye. Something about 8 guilds and proof. It all seemed very grand. Chen Guo clicked on it and suddenly felt like she was in a dream. It can't be a coincidence, right? Chen Guo mumbled. She didn't have much to do and Ye Xiu was no longer on the equipment editor, so she would see what Ye Xiu was up to from time to time. Ye Xiu had received a call to go to Poison Fang Swamp and went to check out the wild boss with Wei Chen's gang. She didn't have any urgent matters to take care of, so she had even hesitated on whether or not she should join them. Before she could make a decision, she noticed the post. Hey, look at this. Chen Guo called for Ye Xiu. Hm. Ye Xiu turned his head in a bored manner, but when his gaze hit Chen Guo's screen, he immediately stared blankly for a moment before quickly reading the content of the post more carefully. At the same time, the 8 guilds had already begun to move. Ye Xiu heard Wei Chen say, what's going on? Why are they leaving? Ye Xiu's gaze returned to his computer and saw the 8 guilds begin to move. The guilds had made an agreement and began to disperse. We have to go back too. Ye Xiu saw their movements and knew it would be difficult for them to hide, especially with Wei Chen's bros. Their skill level was only average and they definitely weren't good enough to deal with this situation. You just worry about yourself, Ye Xiu heard Wei Chen say in delight. Ye Xiu turned his camera around to look and was left completely speechless. Wei Chen's windward formation led 2 teams of players. At this moment, they had put on their guild tags, all from big guilds. Wei Chen's windward formation was from Blue Brook Guild as well as 3 others. Apart from them, there were tags from Herb Garden, Tyrannical Ambition, Excellent Dynasty. All 20 of them had tags from the 8 guilds. He's in the mountain there. deep in the clouds somewhere. Wei Chen recited lines from a poem and chuckled. Clearly, nothing could serve as better protection than a guild tag in their situation. Let alone different guilds, no one knew everyone in their own guilds. Stop acting as if you're cultured. If you're so good at reading, hurry up and check the forums, Ye Xiu said, and then had Lord Grimm retreat. The forums? Why? Wei Chen saw Lord Grimm had already run away, so he typed it out. These guilds actually came to an agreement on something this time. Ye Xiu said. What type of agreement? Wei Chen asked. A peaceful solution, Ye Xiu said. FCK, no way, Wei Chen doubted. He had wanted to steal a boss from the big guild's mouths, and there was only one way to do it, to take advantage of a crisis. The more chaotic the battle, the more numerous the opportunities. But if they decided on a peaceful solution, then how was he supposed to cause a ruckus? Wei Chen told his bros to hurry and hide. At the same time, he reminded them to avoid players from their guilds. A word bubble appeared above his head, and then he left the game to look at the forums. The post had a lot of stickies on it, so Wei Chen easily noticed it. He opened it and skimmed through the contents. He quickly returned to the game and let out a few curses in his private chat window with Lord Grimm. You're plain bad luck. Brother, why do you say that? Ye Xiu replied. Stop pretending. Wei Chen was furious. The 8 guilds made a post as proof and didn't say much about it, but Ye Xiu and Wei Chen could figure out the reason. If he could figure it out, Ye Xiu must have figured it out too. He might be older than Ye Xiu by a few years, but they had the same experience in terms of glory. Why did these 8 guilds suddenly come up with a peaceful way after so many years of fighting and scheming with each other? All because of the pressure from Ye Xiu. Even though they always felt like Ye Xiu should be powerless as a single individual, but this single individual made them suffer losses who knew how many times. So what if he was just an individual? He was constantly a source of their misfortune. How could they ignore him as an opponent simply because he was a single individual? Against such a strong foe, the guilds didn't dare expose any openings, especially after the Wilderness Town fiasco. This individual had picked up a few friends. Deception, heavenly justice, with such powerful helpers, how could he be considered powerless? Wei Chen was just about to loot a burning house, but because of Ye Xiu's existence, the fire disappeared. What could that be called other than a robbery? Wei Chen wasn't some powerful manager. For him, let alone killing a wild boss, just seeing one wasn't easy. If not, why would he not have any materials? Why else would his death's hand still only be level 60 after all these years? This time a rare opportunity came, but because of a reason like this, the opportunity vanished like thin air. Wei Chen wanted to murder Ye Xiu right now. Don't be anxious. Seeing how dirty your 2 teams are playing, let me think of something, Ye Xiu said. Don't tell me to attack them directly and stir up trouble. We're too low-leveled. Everyone here is a core elite. To tell you the truth, I'm afraid they've already seen through our guild tags. If you do that type of method, we'll easily be spotted. Wei Chen said, timing and method are important in stirring up trouble. Your method is too direct. We can be a bit more clever. For example, they'll be organizing their experts to fight in the arena. They'll definitely be taking the top players from their guilds so we can act while they're not there. Moreover, we don't have to directly attack them. We can send in a poisonous worm or take the chance to attack the boss. In any case, they'll have a lot to deal with, Ye Xiu said. Maybe we can announce the boss to the world. Wei Chen said, we can do that too. However, if the 8 guilds have already publicly announced it, the 8 guilds will have allied together. Who has the strength to compete with them? Ye Xiu said. Don't say it like that, we're going to have to do it, Wei Chen said. Right, I forgot, Ye Xiu replied. The things you talked about are possible, Wei Chen began thinking. If they've made the post, then they must have welcomed people to come watch as proof. It should be obvious when they fight the boss. And begin then. We can make our arrangements now, Ye Xiu said. Yes, I'll get busy. This senior will gather a bunch of poisonous worms to receive these young masters, Wei Chen cackled. Do you see the boss? If the opportunity comes, aggro it even if it costs you your life. Ye Xiu said. That must be done, Wei Chen replied. That's good then. Now that I think about it, isn't your existence worthless right now? Wei Chen said. How uncultured. When the time comes, I can come out and make a stand. Just my head and name will gather lots of attention, Ye Xiu said. Wei Chen went silent for a long time. He couldn't help but admit it was true and sighed. DMN, you really are SHT. Everything went as they predicted. The 8 guilds made a post for proof. The more witnesses, the better. They quickly announced the competition, and all spectators were welcome. The players knew the competition would be between the top experts of each guild. Even though they weren't at the pro level, they were still far better than everyone else. They were also easy to find in the game and were sort of like grassroots celebrities. Observe the areas under each guild's control. We'll have an order in which we stir up trouble, so we should do some research, Ye Xiu said. HM, have the ones who lose cause trouble. Wei Chen immediately understood. I'll be watching them. Wait for my message, Ye Xiu said. I'm not ready yet, don't rush it. Wei Chen hurried with his work. That's my fault. Ye Xiu was speechless. Aren't you a god? Wei Chen began arguing again. The King's Avatar Volume 5 Ace Showdown Chapter 534 Chapter 534 Venomous flies. The entrance to the arena in every major city of the heavenly domain suddenly became bustling with noise. After the surrounding players found out about the news, all of them ran to the arena to watch the competition. Every week, pro players provided matches for everyone to watch every week. But what about these guild experts? Even though they were closer to normal players, very few had really seen them play in PvP. Now that the news came out, some people went to cheer for their guild seniors. Some went to see what the noise was all about. Some took the opportunity to make bets. All sorts of people came to the arena towards a single room. The room quickly filled up with people. The 8 guilds intentionally waited for the spectators to come. Seeing that there were enough people, they began the competition. They had thrown dice beforehand to determine the order and knew the results. The first match would be between Misty Castle and Herb Garden. The experts of the two sides were already standing on stage. Meanwhile, Ye Xiu borrowed Chen Guo's computer to watch. He wasn't interested in the fights. From time to time, he would glance at her screen while typing to Wei Chen. What if it comes to Blue Brook Guild? Will you be under pressure? Nonsense. Of course. Don't you see I'm part of Blue Brook Guild? If I get kicked out of the guild, it'll be a huge loss for me. You should know the benefits of being in a big guild. Wei Chen replied. You really are shameless. Ye Xiu disdained. This is called competitive integrity. If you see excellent era, would you go easy because of your memories with them? Wei Chen said. That depends on who I meet, Ye Xiu said. Wei Chen didn't believe him. Afterwards, Ye Xiu continued to glance at the matches from time to time, but most of his attention was traveling around Poison Fang Swamp. He had to avoid the 8 guilds, but he also didn't want to stray too far from the boss. Poison Fang Swamp was very quiet today. The 8 guilds were afraid of outsiders interfering, so while waiting for the results of the competition, they didn't reveal the boss's whereabouts. The heavenly domain was huge. Trying to find it through pure luck wasn't very logical. As for the other guilds, even if they got the information, when they saw the attitudes of the 8 guilds, they knew that trying to join now was already too late. It wouldn't be good to provoke them. In the arena, the 8 guilds didn't play according to all of the pro scene's rules. If they did, it would take way too long, and they didn't have such time to waste. As a result, they only played team competitions to determine the winner with the same rules as the pro scene. 5 versus 5 with 1 substitute each. Because the competition had been quickly devised and set in motion, the map was chosen randomly, so neither side would have any tactical advantage. After fighting back and forth several times, Misty Castle finally couldn't hold on any longer and Herb Garden won the first match. Even though Misty Castle was somewhat disappointed, they weren't suffering. If they had fought for the boss the normal way, their chances of taking the boss was very small, so it wasn't hard accepting their defeat. Misty Castle lost. Ye Xiu told Wei Chen, "I don't think we should act yet. Wait a moment. We can still do a bit more preparing. Wait for an unexpected result. That would be the perfect time to act." Wei Chen was extremely dirty. "Wait for my next message." Ye Xiu didn't say anything more. Next was Blue Brook Guild versus Tyrannical Ambition. Tyrannical Ambition lost. Jiang Yu was the first to propose the plan. Even though the plan had already gone this far, everyone was still a bit hesitant. Seeing how quickly tyrannical ambition had been eliminated, they began believing Jiang Yu didn't have any ulterior motives. Jiang Yu laughed and expressed the acknowledgement of their defeat. Excellent Dynasty versus Blossom Valley. Excellent Dynasty won. Samsara versus Void Walk. Samsara won. 4 guilds were eliminated. None of them were too surprising. The 4 matches ended relatively quickly. Even so, an hour had already passed. Wei Chen worked busily making preparations during that hour. The next round of matches between these 4 guilds began. Enough people had come as witnesses for their matches, so they decided to hurry with the matches and played both at once. Samsara versus Herb Garden. Excellent Dynasty versus Blue Brook Guild. The first match ended with Samsara beating Herb Garden, which was certainly a surprise. When the results came out, the spectators immediately dispersed and went to watch the other match. Chen Guo also went along. The other match quickly ended too. This time Blue Brook Guild lost. "We can act now." Ye Xiu messaged Wei Chen. "What's the situation?" "Herb Garden Blue Brook Guild." Ye Xiu said, "My God, Blue Brook Guild, are you serious?" Wei Chen asked. "Competitive integrity," Ye Xiu reminded. "FCK it, let's go," Wei Chen replied. By this time the 8 guilds had already stopped scouting around. They had confirmed no outsider had come to cause trouble and returned to guard the boss. Wei Chen had finished his preparations. It had been a busy hour. Getting the monsters to gather towards a desired direction wasn't an easy task. The one advantage Wei Chen had was the gang of bros beside him. He could lead them step by step. If they failed, he could personally step in and fix the situation. Ye Xiu finally sent him the go-ahead. Wei Chen picked out a few people and had them start the task. His gang was impatient to move. When they heard the order, they nearly let out a cheer. They controlled their characters and threw insect repellent smoke from their pockets towards the direction Wei Chen had forced them to memorize. After throwing the insect repellent, they heard a buzz that boomed like thunder. A huge swarm of venomous flies had taken flight. Countless venomous flies flew out from the swamp away from the insect repellent. The flies seemed to cover the skies as they moved towards a single direction. Where else could they fly? The insect repellent smoke was in the other direction. In order to get away from the repellent, they had to fly away. The loud buzzing frightened the guild players ahead. When they looked back, they turned pale with fright. FCK, where'd all these venomous flies come from? The venomous flies moved swiftly and arrived in an instant. Wei Chen's bros had already hidden themselves among the guild and threw a bit more insect repellent. Players who came to Poison Fang Swamp often brought insect repellent smoke. It was used very frequently too. Even if they hadn't done this, they probably wouldn't have gotten caught in any case because everyone else was doing the same thing. Insect repellent smoke might be effective, but no matter how much the guild players used at this time, they wouldn't get the desired effect. Insect repellent smoke was just something the insects didn't like. It didn't kill the insects. If the insect repellent smoke surrounded the venomous flies, the flies would buzz around randomly like houseflies. They wouldn't receive any damage. If the player walked too close, the flies would still bite. Players unaware of this bit of knowledge now learned the lesson through their own flesh and blood. One bro threw out some insect repellent, but the repellent surrounded these venomous flies. The flies began flying around randomly and a few still headed towards him. Who knew how many flies came at him? but this bro quickly fell to the ground. This was one reason small monsters like these were scary. Because of their small size, they could fly and attack at the same time, allowing them to cover a wide range. This was one reason why Ye Xiu and Wei Chen chose to use this tactic. If they had been goblins, no matter how many goblins there were, they wouldn't have much killing threat. It was the same theory behind surrounding bosses. Even if you had thousands of troops, only a few could get close to the boss. No. These flies avoided this issue. They could cover above, below, left, right, all around while attacking the player. No matter how little damage they did, with so many of them they would certainly be able to kill. These venomous flies did quite a lot of damage too. The players were level 70. The flies were level 65. The level difference wasn't significant enough. Moreover, their attacks had a chance to poison. The corpse of the dead player had turned green. One person had died instantly, making the others extremely frightened. The second to face the flies was a knight, who instinctively raised his shield. Constant blocking noises could be heard from the venomous flies crashing into his shield. It sounded very comforting, but the knight himself wasn't looking good. Just because the shield blocked the flies didn't mean the knight wasn't taking damage. The shield only reduced damage. With so many flies, the blocking noise continued to echo and the knight's health fell rapidly. In fright, the knight shouted for the clerics to help him. When he looked back, the clerics had been surrounded by venomous flies too. These venomous flies automatically attacked and wouldn't only attack a single target. They had each found their own target. Players who only had one fly targeting them weren't afraid, but with everyone packed together so closely, the flies would eventually get them. The swarm of venomous flies had come from nowhere, catching everyone off guard. Many players instantly died. The remaining hastily moved into a defensive formation. The flies wouldn't be enough to wipe out their entire group. The news of being ambushed quickly reached their guild leader's ears. The ambushed guild happened to be the guild just about to enter the deciding match. Samsara. What? Samsara's guild leader, 3 World 6 Paths, became furious and immediately became suspicious of Herb Garden, who had just been defeated by Samsara. When a big guild lost a big opportunity, it was hard not to be resentful. When he thought of the initial agreement from every guild, Herb Garden's response had been somewhat reluctant. Now his guild had been ambushed by venomous flies. Of course. After all, the agreement was up for everyone to see, so it wasn't possible to directly make an attack, so they made an indirect attack instead. Despicable. 3 World 6 Paths cursed in anger. The other guild leaders also received the news and immediately knew who 3 Worlds was angry at. Jiang Yu, who had proposed the idea, hastily said in defense, 3 Worlds, don't be rash. We don't know the whole situation yet. All 8 guilds cleared the field together. There couldn't have been a problem. If it wasn't us, then who could it be? The venomous flies couldn't have just happened to all come out and attack them. Even the noobs of the 10th server would laugh. 3 World 6 Paths spat. Jiang Yu was just about to respond when he suddenly received more news. His own guild had been attacked by venomous flies and Blue Brook Guild had started fighting the boss. The King's Avatar Volume 5 Ace Showdown Chapter 535 Chapter 535. Fierce Mantis. This piece of news surprised Jiang Yu. He still wanted to calmly figure out what exactly happened, but the other guilds had already begun stamping their feet in anger. Tyrannical Ambition wasn't the only one who had been attacked by a swarm of venomous flies. All of the guilds had been thrown into disorder. The sudden ambush by the venomous flies wasn't easy to deal with. Is this the so-called peaceful way? 3 World 6 Realms couldn't sit still once he learned that Blue Brook Guild had started fighting the boss. His guild hadn't been eliminated yet, and now someone had caused a ruckus. Did this mean everything before had been for naught? How could he stay calm? Excellent Dynasty was in a similar mood. They had also won 2 matches in a row and were one of the last remaining guilds in the competition. When they heard about the disturbance, they immediately denounced Blue Brook Guild too. Apart from them, Misty Castle, Void Walk, Blossom Valley had truly hoped this would be a peaceful way of determining the owner of the boss. Seeing such an act of betrayal, they naturally felt extremely angry and also lashed out at Blue Brook Guild. They did it in the public chat too, directly exposing the misdeed to all of the spectators watching the deciding match. The spectators heard the news and also went into an uproar. Blue Brook Guild immediately became the target of a rain of arrows. Ye Xiu saw the situation from Chen Guo's screen and felt somewhat disapproving. He sent Wei Chen's windward formation a message. Don't you think that pretending Blue Brook Guild is fighting the boss feels a bit too fake? All of them can confirm it. This approach is too stupid. It's not realistic at all. You have to link it with the actual circumstances. When something like this happens, it can easily be explained, but for some reason, Blue Brook Guild's guild leader changing Spring seems to have some sort of mental block towards typing words. If you want this guy to give an explanation to dissolve the situation, it's not going to happen. Wei Chen replied. Ye Xiu was speechless. He didn't think Wei Chen would be so merciless to Blue Brook Guild. He truly deserves to be considered one of the most shameless pros in the competitive scene. You truly have no sense of kindness. Ye Xiu sighed. As they discussed this with each other, the situation had already devolved into a complete mess. Nearly all of the 8 guilds had been ambushed by venomous flies and had no time to deal with others. They could only watch with eyes dripping blood as Swamp Hunger Lepu pounced at Blue Brook Guild. As for Blue Brook Guild, they had no idea what was going on. The venomous flies didn't attack them. At first they felt lucky and put up their guards. Who knew the other guilds had already put the blame on them and were looking at them with murderous intentions. Finally, Blue Brook Guild encountered an attack, but it wasn't by venomous flies. It was by the boss. For the other guilds, this completely confirmed the conspiracy theory. If it weren't for the venomous flies attack them, the other guilds would have already started attacking Blue Brook Guild. In reality, Blue Brook Guild had no idea the boss would suddenly charge at them. It seemed like someone had accidentally attacked or entered the boss's aggro range. The problem was in this mess. No one had been paying attention. Who was it? The team leader even asked, but the boss wasn't going to wait for them to talk. Swamp Hunter Lepu, an assassin and a thief dual class. His movements were incredibly swift. He took a single step and became a blur. In an instant, he appeared in front of Blue Brook Guild's boss team. He lifted up his 2 hands and pulled out 2 daggers. One of them was held in an upright position, while the other was held in reverse. He stabbed with one dagger and slashed with the other, sending 2 people tumbling backwards. Blue Brook Guild has started attacking the boss. Someone suddenly yelled from nearby. We didn't. Blue Brook Guild's team leader immediately yelled. He clearly realized pulling the boss in this situation was a very serious problem. Blue Brook Guild set up venomous flies to attack us and is now taking the opportunity to kill the boss. Blue Brook Guild is too despicable. Shouts of criticism came ceaselessly. The team leader of Blue Brook Guild was sweating like mad. The top core experts in the guild were peak experts and had gone to the arena to fight. The team leader had been left here and had now encountered a difficult problem. In panic, he hastily asked the guild leader for help. How could he know the guild leader was in an even worse situation than him? He was drowning in spittle right now. Everyone retreat. Do not attack back. The team leader couldn't get a reply from the guild leader, so he could only give instructions on his own. He told his guild members not to touch the boss to prove their good faith. But who was Swamp Hunter Lepu? A wild boss. Standing there taking a beating and not attacking back wasn't something he would understand. If the clerics started healing the injured, the boss would immediately switch targets to the clerics. Even if the clerics healed each other to tank the boss, they wouldn't last long. Under this vicious cycle, the team would wipe out. If they didn't attack back, they would prove their good faith. It might be effective, but against Swamp Hunter Lepu, they would certainly die in order to prove this point. The team leader never said clearly if this was his intention. The team members didn't plan on sacrificing their lives for principles. If they couldn't fight back, then what else could they do other than run? As a result, they began to retreat. They didn't fight back, but by running, it looked like they were trying to move the boss away from all of the other guilds. Were they trying to prove their good faith, or did they have other evil schemes in mind? They want to leave. The other guilds fending off venomous flies saw what was happening and thought their true objective was to pull the boss away. Blue Brook Guild is about to pull the boss away. Guild leader, do we kill them or not? Guild leader, kill or not? At this moment, the guild leaders saw the news and became furious. Everything had already reached this step. Who would listen to Changing Spring's excuses? Samsara's 3 worlds 6 paths directly left. Excellent dynasties, Chen Yehui quickly followed suit. On the other hand, the other guilds were in a bit of a predicament though. According to their agreement, Samsara or Excellent Dynasty should be the ones to kill Swamp Hunter Lepu. Even though someone had broken the agreement first, if they used this opportunity to fight for the boss, they wouldn't be any different from the original betrayer. With so many spectators as proof of their losses in the previous matches, it wouldn't be appropriate to fight the boss. They didn't dare to act rashly in this type of situation. Was Blue Brook Guild really that SHTTY? Everyone mumbled to themselves, but none of them said it out loud. They had already lost their opportunity to kill the boss. In any case, it would be better to watch the events unfold. Why should they speak up for Blue Brook Guild? Even if one day everyone finds a peaceful way to walk on, thoughts of hoping the other side to fall would always stay. Deep down, everyone knew a peaceful way of competing for objectives was just an ideal. The reason for their temporary agreement wasn't the norm. Against a god like Lord Grimm and an eye-catching heavenly justice, they had to give them their attention. None of them truly had much good faith towards each other. Kill. 3 worlds 6 paths was the first to give the order. He had taken a huge mental blow and felt like he had been duped. Right now, it was either the fish died or the net split. Even if his guild couldn't get the boss, he would make sure Blue Brook Guild would suffer. 3 worlds 6 paths could be hot-blooded at times. He wasn't someone who only planned carefully and meticulously. With his personality, and at this type of battle, the morale he could muster up was frightening. Nothing else mattered but to kill. Samsara was the first to be hit by the venomous flies and had suffered a few losses, but they were also first to stabilize the situation. Anyone who came to kill the wild boss would naturally be the guild's elites. A disturbance like this wasn't something that would stop them. Even though they hadn't completely cleared away the venomous flies when they received their guild leader's order, several of them took up their weapons and charged towards Blue Brook Guild. Brothers, forward! Kill those despicable, shameless Blue Brook Guild dogs! Samsara's team leader roared and took the lead. His face had already been torn apart and his voice didn't sound pleasant. At the same time, 3 worlds 6 paths gave a reply on the post on their agreement. He announced that Blue Brook Guild would reap the consequences for going back on their word. Samsara had been tricked and they weren't going to tolerate it. Fight. Your Blue Brook Guild might be one of the 3 great guilds, but our Samsara isn't afraid. Today, we'll teach you a lesson. It was very rare for a guild leader to make a declaration. With how the club guilds operated, even though there had been many conflicts across all of the servers, no one had ever made such a powerful statement. Let alone challenging a stronger guild, it wasn't wise to do so from a business perspective either. 3 worlds 6 paths reply was picked out and made as a post. Supporters gathered together, not just Samsara fans, but the neutral fans also stood by Samsara. Team Blue Rain fans didn't know the truth and with just the revelations given by the spectators, they had no way of justifying their guild's actions. Kill. In Poison Fang Swamp, Samsara charged at Blue Brook Guild, who were still trying to prove they weren't attacking the boss. How could they have known the others thought they were trying to pull the boss away? When they saw Samsara suddenly rushing at them, they once again panicked. Samsara was smart too. They only attacked Blue Brook Guild and wouldn't aggro the boss. Swamp Hunter Lepu would be focused on Blue Brook Guild and would act as a helper to Samsara. FCK, what are you guys going? Blue Brook Guild's team leader still wanted to try explaining the situation, but Samsara directly chopped him into pieces and turned him into a corpse. Samsara shouted their resentment and went berserk. Blue Brook Guild no longer had a leader and fell into disarray. They formed small groups and defended against the attack. The other guilds had stabilized their teams, but because they had lost the matches in the arena, their guild leaders ordered them not to interfere. However, one guild was different. Excellent Dynasty had stabilized themselves after the venomous fly ambush, but didn't directly charge forward like Samsara. They simply smiled as they watched Blue Brook Guild get slaughtered. Samsara brothers, our Excellent Dynasty has a share of this boss. Excellent Dynasty's team leader felt like very pleased with their circumstances. Okay, come. Even if you two both fight together, our Samsara isn't afraid. Samsara's players didn't plan on stopping. Excellent Dynasty was surprised. What a fierce mantis. After finishing off the snake, the mantis was also planning on taking down the Oriole the King's Avatar Volume 5 Ace Showdown Chapter 536. Chapter 536, Nobody Move. Excellent Dynasty thought that they would be the ones to give Samsara a surprise, but they never thought that they would be the ones surprised by Samsara. There wasn't much interaction between them. As soon as Excellent Dynasty started shouting, Samsara immediately pounced on them as if they were mad. FCK, did you guys go crazy? Excellent Dynasty had tried to deliver shock to their opponents, but turned out to be the ones shocked. They confidently thought that they could hold their ground against Samsara. After Samsara's vicious fight against Blue Brook Guild, they must have suffered heavy losses. Right after Excellent Dynasty made their intentions clear, even if they didn't compromise, they could at least negotiate. They wouldn't be in too terrible of a situation. However, Samsara was extremely unreasonable. Despite the obvious difference in strength, they were still actively engaging their enemies in battle with absolutely no intentions of negotiating. Were they delusional? Despite not having good intentions, Excellent Dynasty didn't expect that they would have such a major fallout with Samsara. They hadn't been prepared for Samsara's response. Samsara's fierce attack caught them by surprise, and just like Blue Brook Guild, they were beaten into submission. Before they could come to their senses, several of their players had already fallen. What are you doing, Samsara? Excellent Dynasty players were angry, but they didn't want to be so irrational like Samsara and go straight for the blood of their enemies. If both sides fought each other, wouldn't others take advantage? They were there for the boss, not to PK. Boss. Right. Where's the boss? When they thought of this, the players from Excellent Dynasty immediately looked towards Blue Brook Guild to look for the boss. Blue Brook Guild was having a rough time today. They didn't dare to fight back against the boss's attacks, and they felt wronged by Samsara's attacks. Facing attacks from both sides, the casualties were very heavy. Even with Samsara's sudden change of attention towards Excellent Dynasty, the boss was still wreaking havoc, though the boss was finally pulled away by someone else. But such an action didn't feel right in the eyes of the other guilds, especially Excellent Dynasty that had been plotting to get the boss rationally. However, the boss had already been pulled far away. The ones dragging the boss away were 3 players with Blue Brook Guild tags. The boss has already been stolen away. Why are we fighting? The team leader of Excellent Dynasty roared in frustration. Our Samsara isn't fighting for the boss today. We fight for our honor. Samsara replied in an arrogant manner, not backing down a single inch. Excellent Dynasty's players coughed up blood. Samsara didn't have the rationale that a club guild was supposed to have. Fine. You want your honor, go play with Blue Brook Guild. Stop bothering us, we still have important matters to tend to. Excellent Era's team leader shouted. HMPH, don't think we don't know what Excellent Dynasty is planning. Samsara's people yelled back. All said and done, Excellent Dynasty felt somewhat guilty. Right after Blue Brook Guild's trickery was exposed, Samsara immediately charged in. On the other hand, Excellent Dynasty bided their time, waiting for Samsara and Blue Brook Guild to beat each other up, and then planning to appear out of nowhere to make their presence known. However, Samsara clearly didn't care any more and continued fighting. You think Excellent Dynasty is afraid of you? Excellent Dynasty's team leader felt angry too. He originally hadn't wanted to fight with Samsara, but how could he hold himself back anymore? He couldn't. With a shout, Excellent Dynasty immediately engaged Samsara in a vicious battle. Fine, we didn't have the chance to fight each other in the arena, so let's settle our scores right here right now. Samsara players didn't show even a hint of fear. Their morale was high as ever. The other guilds could only stare at each other with wide eyes. They couldn't understand Samsara's irrational behavior either. Going against Blue Brook Guild could bring honor to your guild and could return the rights to fight the boss to the rightful guild. But the fight against Excellent Dynasty was just pure anger at them. They threw away any gains for their honor. The guilds had also finally stabilized the situation after the ambush by poisonous flies. They were too embarrassed to join the fight for the boss. However, with two guilds already fighting against each other and the boss being dragged further and further away by Blue Brook Guild members, they really wanted to move. But as soon as they made even the slightest of movements, they were intercepted by players from Blue Brook Guild. Nobody moves, Blue Brook Guild's players shouted. We have to clarify this matter right now. FCK, the boss is being dragged away by your guys and you're still telling us to remain where we are. What's there to be discussed? Everyone was angry after listening to Blue Brook Guild. The boss is gone, but this has nothing to do with you. According to our agreement, do you guys have the rights to kill it? Somebody from Blue Brook Guild said in a cold voice. It was Blue Brook Guild's leader, Changing Spring. It wasn't possible to get over here from the city so quickly unless a teleportation scroll was used. With chaos erupting at both sites, Changing Spring had a lot on his hands. But the situation in Poison Fang Swamp was somewhat cleaner. Everyone there was from the 8 guilds. In comparison, there were numerous spectators in the arena. Changing Spring thought it out and decided to settle things in the swamp first. Once he teleported, he found that the situation had already reached such a critical step. We agreed to maintain order here, but your Blue Brook Guild broke its promise, took the boss away, and is now stopping us from following it. Do you think we're stupid? You're not stupid, but we're not idiots either. Anybody who thinks that this is caused by Blue Brook Guild has a brain full of SHT. With Blue Brook Guild treated unjustly, courtesy was the last thing on Changing Spring's mind. Suffering from attacks by Samsara and the boss, only a few Blue Brook Guild players remained, but they clutched tightly to their weapons and went into formation, giving out a tenacious aura just like Samsara. You're still putting up a farce. The 3 men that pulled the boss away had Blue Brook Guild tags hanging right on top of their heads. Everybody saw it. Someone shouted. Just having a guild tag proves that there are men. Is this your first day playing Glory? Are you that naive? The person was instead ridiculed by Changing Spring, and he couldn't come up with a response. Framing wasn't impossible. All the guilds on scene had several accounts in hand that bore the Blue Brook Guild tag. I swear that this matter today has nothing to do with Blue Brook Guild, and I am almost certain that the guilds present here wouldn't do such shameless acts either. This must be the work of an outsider, Changing Spring said. You can say anything you want, but who knows if this isn't a plot by Blue Brook Guild? Someone still questioned. Destroying our own reputation for a mere level 65 boss. Think about it rationally, is that worth it? Changing Spring responded with a question of his own. The players went silent again. They were all the elites of their guilds and they understood his reasoning. Since Changing Spring was already on the scene, the leaders of the other guilds weren't far behind. Some of them had even arrived earlier than him, but as the losers in the arena, their positions became awkward. As a result, they kept quiet, waiting for a change in situation just like Excellent Dynasty did earlier on. Excellent Dynasty was one of the victors in the duel. After waiting for chance to come, they switched from being passive to aggressive. They tried to grab the prize, which resulted in their clash with Samsara that ended with massive casualties on both sides. The other guilds were also observing from the sidelines and made the decision to strike and grab the benefits for their own. But just as they were sneaking up on the boss, they were stopped by Changing Spring. The guild leaders had no choice but to continue staying at the sidelines, waiting for Changing Spring to handle the current situation. It seemed like it wouldn't hard for him, though, as long as no one else was in a complete frenzy like Samsara was. Changing Spring's analysis on the situation was acceptable. After noticing that the chaos had subsided, each guild's leader could no longer hide their presence and had to speak up for their guild. What Brother Spring said made sense, but it's also true that the boss was stolen. Are we just going to sit here and watch? The guild leader of Herb Garden, Arasima, asked. Ha ha, sit here and watch. I don't think so. I don't believe that a simple "don't move" from me could stop you guys. Let me guess, the ones that are secretly tracking the boss aren't of the minority, right? Not a single member of Blue Brook Guild took part in such an action, and I hope that the guilds that did will watch carefully. We'll see clearly who got the boss in the end. I'd like to ask for you guys to record the entire process. My Blue Brook Guild needs it as proof of our innocence. Thanks. The guild leaders were silent again. Changing Spring's deduction was correct. They didn't let Blue Brook Guild stop them and had already sent people out to secretly track down the boss. As for the words that came after, they didn't object to them. Those were formalities. If it was a plot by Blue Brook Guild and they sent out a team carrying the Blue Brook Guild's banner to meet up with those three at this point, then they were truly stupid. Even if Blue Brook Guild was setting it up, they'd be using open accounts, and such accounts had no ties with the guild. Guild leaders were people capable of thinking quickly and coming up with countless schemes in a single second. Faced with this situation, their priority was no longer the boss, but to hurt Blue Brook Guild as much as possible. This was much more valuable than the rare items and materials dropped by some random wild boss. What should they do? Send out their spies in Blue Brook Guild. Kill those that were aiding the three that stole the boss, creating a situation where nobody took over the boss, which would be a sign that Blue Brook Guild was guilty. Ideas after ideas flashed through the minds of the guild leaders while Excellent Dynasty and Samsara were still fighting. Nobody thought to break up the fight. Deep down, they hated the two victors of the fight for the boss and hoped that both would suffer heavy losses. DMN, I've finally stolen the boss, but somebody is tailing me. Are you ready? At the same time, Wei Chen sent a message to Ye Xiu's Lord Grim. I've been waiting. Ye Xiu replied. For those two, the plan was simple. They really hadn't planned on harming any guilds. Their goal was to kill the boss and get the materials that they direly needed. That was all. The King's Avatar Volume 5 Ace Showdown Chapter 537 Chapter 537 Lurker's Poison Fang Swamp. Numerous players from club guilds were sprinting forward. In their field of view, they could see Swamp Hunter Lepu running in the same direction. This was the problem with wild bosses. Because of their random spawn locations, they had no fixed area where they resided. The swamp hunter could move about in any area of the Poison Fang swamp. Any aggroing skills could pull Swamp Hunter Lepu to any part of the map. However, it wasn't easy to do. If a player could effortlessly pull the wild boss all around the map, wouldn't it be easy to kite the boss around forever? This was why the 3 Blue Brook Guild players that had managed to steal the Swamp Hunter Lepu were in a difficult situation. It took a lot of effort for them to deal with the boss chasing them from behind. As a result, the speed at which they were escaping wasn't fast. If the pursuers wanted to catch up, the pursuers would catch up to them in no time. It was just that the guild members had received different orders from their guild leaders. Not one of them had any intention of catching up to the boss. Instead, they stayed behind and observed, while diverting a part of their attention to keep an eye out for players from other guilds. If you have the chance, you can try and take them out, but remember you must stay hidden. 2 players from Herb Garden, Octagon Aniseed and Sword Bean, received these orders from their guild leader. These 2 characters were named after herbs and were core members of the guild, so the guild leader had great trust in them. One of them was an assassin, while the other was a ninja. Both classes were adept in ambush and assassination. With the poor terrain of the Poison Fang swamp, it was the perfect place for their classes to shine. As they tracked down the boss, they set their sights on a battle mage from Misty Castle. Battle mages wore leather armor and only had mediocre health and defense. Because of the movement speed buff from the neutral chaser, the battle mage moved quite fast, but to trigger the buff, the battle mage had to constantly attack targets. Thus, the battle mage had to attack monsters constantly in an attempt to maintain the movement speed buff from the neutral chaser. He exposed himself a lot, possibly because of his guild leader's orders. However, this pursuit didn't require high movement speed, so the movement speed buff from the neutral chaser wasn't necessary. No good. He's attracting too much attention. If we kill him, he might not notice us, but the others definitely would. This isn't good for us. Octagon Aniseed said to Sword Bean. There wasn't enough time to deploy open accounts, which was why Arasima ordered them directly to go on this mission. Even if they hid their guild tag, their names were too obvious. Even if their names weren't exposed, the spies hidden in their guild could easily search their name up. This was why Arasima specifically gave orders for them to leave the guild if they were revealed. Let's go for another target then. Sword Bean agreed with Octagon Aniseed's opinion. Right when they were about to reposition themselves, a flame appeared in their field of view. It originated from underneath the battle mage. Being veterans, they could tell that the battle mage had triggered an inferno trap planted by a thief. The elites from club guilds usually possessed extraordinary skills. The battle mage immediately reacted by jumping backwards after triggering the trap. Although he still took some of the damage, it was way better than having to take the full brunt of the trap's damage. Inferno traps didn't have the ability to limit a character's movement, but its continuous damage could be fatal. Even though the battle mage avoided the trap, he was still set ablaze after taking the initial damage, and his hit points continued to drop. The damage was far from being fatal, though. The battle mage immediately became more cautious after setting off the trap. He did a 360-degree sweep of his surroundings, surprising Octagon Aniseed and Sword Bean, who hastily ducked under cover. When they finally popped their heads up again, the battle mage had retreated to the safety of a tree. He had his back to the tree to prevent himself from being flanked. A ninja suddenly appeared on top of the tree and slowly slid downwards with a body disappearing technique. Just as he was about to reach his target, he abruptly dropped. By the time the battle mage noticed the descending ninja, it was too late. The ninja knocked him off balance with a body bind technique. At the same time, an assassin charged out from another direction. Judging from his movement that was filled with killing intent, Octagon Aniseed immediately recognized the most fearsome technique used by the assassin class: life-risking strike. Assassins didn't have much health to begin with. Life-risking strike sacrificed the health of its user to deal damage to the enemy. It wasn't capable of one-shotting most classes, but the mage class was worse off than assassins. Although battle mages were famous for their close combat abilities, they were still fundamentally mages, who were well known for being squishy targets. The life-risking strike from the assassin didn't blow the battle mage away, but the blood that came pouring out of his back showed the extent of the damage dealt by the strike. The battle mage was still alive after the attack. He managed to turn around, but just as he was about to take a look at the ninja's name, a gunshot could be heard around the area, and a bullet shot through the battle mage's right shoulder. The battle mage spun around, and the visual angle that he was about to gain was lost. The ninja wasted no time to sneak behind the battle mage and threw a flurry of ninjutsu and blade techniques at his opponent. As for the assassin, he was under a long period of exhaustion after carrying out the life-risking strike. Strong moves carried great risk. Incredible marksmanship. Octagon Aniseed and Sword Bean knew what was what. Although the assassin and the ninja were the main damage dealers, the mysterious gunshot was the one that truly showed skill. The timing and the location of the shot was precisely calculated, but it was still wasted effort. Even though the assassin and the ninja weren't seen by the battle mage, they had been seen by the duo. Someone has the same idea as us. Octagon Aniseed and Sword Bean murmured to each other. They sent a message to their guild leader, asking for an investigation on the two characters. "Should we go after them?" Sword Bean asked Octagon Aniseed after sending the message. "No, that shooter is still around." Octagon Aniseed looked, but he couldn't spot anything unusual. They could guess the direction of the gunfire by listening to the gunshot, but they weren't sure if the shooter was still lurking about as they couldn't detect any movements. "Those two, I don't recognize any of them," Sword Bean said. Elites of a guild were more or less known. Even if they didn't know them personally, they would still recognize them. "Neither do I." Octagon Aniseed shook his head. "Could they be open accounts?" Sword Bean asked. "Whose open account could they belong to for them to have arrived so fast?" Octagon Aniseed countered. Sword Bean gave it a thought and agreed with him. They became more cautious after witnessing others having the same intent as them. At the same time, they felt lucky that they didn't make their move on the battle mage. That would have exposed them. They were the victors of this incident. A competitor had been taken care of, while they were able to remain in the shadows. And the other three, they had exposed themselves at the cost of taking out a competitor. Misty Castle was the first to know when one of their own was killed. The guild leader didn't betray any reaction after learning of the news. He knew that the group that went out to track down the boss was up to something. If they could silently eliminate all their competitors, the boss just might fall into their hands. Misty Locke adjusted his view, sweeping across the players of each guild, and spotted a player sneaking off from the crowd. "What are you doing?" What Misty Locke didn't expect was that several guild leaders shouted the same thing at the same time and they were looking at the same direction. "Huh? What, me?" The player took a while to recover from the shock of being shouted at by so many guild leaders. "I'm not trying to do anything." "You want to leave?" "No. From now on, nobody leaves," one of the guild leaders shouted. From Misty Locke's point of view, these guild leaders must have received intelligence that one of his members was killed. Wasn't it a little too obvious? Despite thinking about it, he was still unsettled. One of his players had died, and with so many pairs of eyes watching, he couldn't send out any reinforcements. He could only depend on the men that he had sent out earlier on. But with one man down, how could he not be anxious? Not bad. I've received some new info. The results were good." On the other side of the map, Ye Xiu's Lord Grimm received news from Wei Chen after assassinating the player from Misty Castle. "With them restricting each other, our job will be simple," Ye Xiu replied. Then move faster, Wei Chen replied. You can't hold on any longer, Ye Xiu asked. Shut your F-seeking mouth. It's a LV-65 field boss, why don't you take it out for a walk? Wei Chen cursed. Seeing that you have the leisure to reply, you seem to have free time on your hands, Ye Xiu said. Wei Chen immediately made it known that he was very busy. That was a nice kill. Another discussion ensued in Lord Grimm's team. Ha ha, everybody listen to my instructions. Let's continue. Ye Xiu said in the chat. Yes, yes. Wei Chen's bros replied in a straightforward manner. They didn't hold a grudge towards Ye Xiu despite their previous conflict. When they learned that Ye Xiu was friends with Wei Chen, they saw him as a friend too. And since they were friends, they had no problems listening to Ye Xiu's commands. No glory player would have the confidence to claim that their tactics were better than God Ye Xiu. We've taken out one from Misty Castle. Herb Garden is next. Those two moved together and they seemed to be quite happy peeking at us just now. Good things should go in pairs. Let's kill the both of them, Ye Xiu exclaimed. Roger that, the gang shouted. This time the ones from Tyrannical Ambition will do the job. Ye Xiu said the King's Avatar Volume 5 Ace Showdown Chapter 538 Chapter 538 Who Killed Me? Octagon Aniseed and Sword Bean felt ill at ease. Although they could still console themselves with the fact that they were the victors, they were still shaken by their opponent's remarkable shot. If we have to go up against someone like that, will we be okay? They didn't say it out loud, but they gave the question a long thought. At the same time, they searched out all the gunner experts from the other guilds. With such skill, the person couldn't be some normal member of a guild unless he was just lucky. He or she had to be a famous core member of a guild. Who could it be? Both of them made wild guesses, but information quickly arrived from their guild leader Arasima. We found out the identity of those two. They're from Blossom Valley, Arasima said. Blossom Valley. With a narrower range, Octagon Aniseed and Sword Bean began to ponder over who the gunner expert in Blossom Valley might be. However, they could name numerous possibilities. There could be many who unknown experts. It wasn't rare for Blossom Valley to have a lot of gunners. The famous character Dazzling 100 Blossom itself was a Spitfire in their pro team, so there would naturally be a lot of Spitfires in the guild. Even though they relied heavily on the special effects of their ammunition, marksmanship was also a fundamental that every player needed to learn. Herb Garden learned of the identity of the two assailants at the same time as the other guilds. At that moment, only Blossom Valley's grasp of the situation was different from the others. These two don't exist. This was the message obtained from Blossom Valley's spies in each of the guilds. They've even dispatched open accounts. Not knowing that these two characters were from his own guild, Blossom Valley's guild leader Blooming Blossom was astonished. With tens of thousands of players in a guild, only a few of the experts were well known. Wei Chen's brothers tended to lurk in the guilds for their extra bonuses and stats. How would such characters be remembered? When the guilds began their investigation on the two mysterious characters, they started from the other guilds because there was no reason to suspect one of their own. This resulted in a situation where Blossom Valley wasn't aware of the situation, while still thinking that the other big guilds were using their open accounts. Despite knowing the truth, the other guilds remained silent. Even those that didn't begin to do so. If they used that as an accusation towards Blossom Valley, it would be meaningless. The rivalry in Poison Fang Swamp continued. With the additional information, Octagon Aniseed and Sword Bean speculations increased. They still had the boss in sight. After all, it was quite conspicuous. However, with players from the other guilds beginning to operate in a sneaky manner, they soon lost their target. The sudden realization surprised them. The situation didn't look good. The enemies were lurking in the shadows. With this, they had to take on a more passive stance. Were they being targeted? Was there a trap lying in wait for them? The two hesitated. They didn't dare carry on their mission separately. They used each other as a source of strength. They crouched and crawled the entire way. They bent their bodies so far down that their heads could almost reach their own crotches. With all of their attention focused on moving around, they neglected the terrain of the Poison Fang swamp. During a short moment of absent-mindedness, Octagon Aniseed missed the timing of using his repellent, startling an entire swarm of venomous flies. What bad luck! The duo cursed under their breath. The flies weren't organized, so they weren't afraid, but the flies were still annoying. The duo failed to notice two other players who had snuck up behind them while they were busy handling the flies. A grappler's skill, Flying Hand, landed on them without warning, pushing them onto the ground. With their characters buried in the mud, the two could do nothing but watch as their health slowly disappeared. They couldn't even find out what skills were used in the attack. As they struggled to regain their footing, their opponents were nowhere to be found even after they did a 360-degree sweep on their surroundings. Where could they hide in such a short time? Their view shifted to a pile of rotten wood. But even if the enemy players hid themselves, the venomous flies were still continuing their attack. If they chose to deal with those flies, their enemies would attack them from the rear, but they couldn't ignore the flies either. Those bites could kill. The two were in a dilemma. They decided to bear with the lesser of the two evils. Players were way more terrifying compared to flies, so they decided to storm the wooden pile after a brief discussion. There was nothing behind the pile of rotten wood except for a ditch full of mud. With their approach, more venomous flies appeared from within the ditch. With more venomous flies, they could no longer ignore their damage. Experiencing a sneak attack while fighting against mob was always something unavoidable in the game, but this was exactly what the duo was facing. Moreover, while trying to attack the enemy players, they only attracted more flies. They knew that with the huge venomous fly swarm attacking them, they would certainly die if the enemy players made a move. However, the enemy seemed intent on hiding their identities. Was it necessary to play hide and seek in this situation, though? Everybody else had the same plan anyways. There was no point in hiding. Weren't the last ones standing the ones with the rights to get the boss? Just when Octagon Aniseed and Swordbean were trying to figuring out their opponent's intentions on staying hidden, their opponents answered their questions. They attacked without mercy as soon as the duo was swarmed by the venomous flies. Because they weren't afraid of being exposed, there was no need to be quick and decisive. Octagon Aniseed and Swordbean knew that they would die. They did their best and tried to take out at least one of their opponents, but their opponents calmly took advantage of the venomous flies. The duo could do nothing but watch as their characters became two rotten corpses. The swamp hunting game had begun. Ye Xiu and his gang weren't the only ones looking for the chance to strike. Even the other guilds were starting to look for others to kill. Meanwhile, the guilds stayed in a deadlock. All of them wanted to call for reinforcements, but none of them wished to see the opposing guilds getting reinforced as well. This resulted in a stalemate where they could only wait for the reports coming out from the swamp. Dead. Dead. Another dead. One by one, the players that were sent out to track down the boss were killed. It was meaningless to even find out which guild did it because everybody was doing it. The more meaningful matter at hand was who would be the last one standing. Nobody knew how many players were sent out, and nobody knew who killed the boss in the end. Since nobody knew, they could achieve their means through underhanded means and ignore the proof post. 5 out of 8 guilds competed. Apart from these 5, Samsara and Excellent Dynasty were still at war, and Blue Brook Guild never sent anyone after the boss. True to Changing Spring's words, Blue Brook Guild didn't send any players out. They only watched as the situation unfolded. Each guild had the urge to make the first move, but they kept silent because their actions were being watched closely by the other guilds. The guilds hadn't sent many players out, 3 or 5 at most. With news of loss after loss coming in, Herb Garden was the first one to lose all 4 of the players that they had sent into the swamp. Arasima was sad. 4 of his men had died and not a single enemy had been killed. His moment of depression didn't last long, though. Arasima found the perfect opportunity. All of them were moving in the dark and nobody dared to bring it to light. But with Herb Garden players killed, while not killing anyone else, weren't they the victim? Arasima could seize the opportunity and make an issue out of it. Arasima wasted no time to suddenly jump out and shouted with a face full of anger. FCK, which of your despicable beastards killed all the men that I've sent out? What's the meaning of this? Are you guys secretly preparing to kill the boss? Was our previous agreement just a joke? To be a leader of a guild, one had to have very high levels of the skills thick-faced and deceitful on one's skill tree, but Arasima's words still shocked the other guild leaders. There had to be limit to the amount of skill points invested into the skills thick-faced and deceitful, right? The level of Arasima's skill was so high that he must be hacking. Despite Arasima's sudden outburst, the other guild leaders had to maintain their mask of deception. Such matters could be done secretly, but things would get out of hand if light were to be shed upon it because not everybody's hands were dirty. Excellent Dynasty, Samsara, and Blue Brook Guild didn't participate in the foul play. If their betrayal came out, the proof post would be seen as a joke. Everyone would look bad. How could they let that happen? The other guild leaders could only maintain a calm demeanor. What do you mean? Aren't we all trying to help track down the boss so that it wouldn't be stolen? Then how did my men die? Are you telling me that they accidentally fell in a ditch somewhere and died? Can tyrannical ambition, Blossom Valley, Misty Castle give me an explanation? Arasima refuted. After a thorough investigation, he concluded that players from these 3 guilds had killed his subordinates. The leaders of Blossom Valley and Misty Castle remained silent, while Jiangyu of tyrannical ambition replied, "An explanation? I think you're the one that owes me an explanation." FC King, explain what? Arasima shouted. Backward Strike and Tiger Sigil. Which guild killed these 2 pieces of trash? Said Jiangyu, while shifting his sight towards the leaders of Blossom Valley and Misty Castle. The leaders of the other 2 guilds, Blooming Blossom and Misty Lock, were stunned. They had each taken out a Herb Garden player, but their names were Perfect Milky Way and Hugging is Healthier. Who are those 2 pieces of trash? What do they have to do with me? Arasima was puzzled by Jiangyu's words. What do you mean, what do they have to do with me? Are you FC King blind? It was Jiangyu's turn to be stunned. He was expecting Arasima to kick the 2 players out from his guild, but according to the spies in Herb Garden, the players were still members of the guild and were still online. Was Arasima's thick-faced really buffed by a cheat engine? What? Arasima finally realized that something was wrong. He was able to find the 2 names after a brief search. They definitely weren't part of the men sent out by him. Ha 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 ha. What are you all chatting about? Changing Spring of Blue Brook Guild suddenly spoke up. The King's Avatar Volume 5 Ace Showdown Chapter 539 Chapter 539 Conclusion to the Hunt. Changing Spring laughed coldly. Herb Garden and tyrannical ambition had also realized something wasn't right. The others soon noticed too. Not good at all. Everyone, haven't we forgotten something? Changing Spring asked. The other guild leaders started to sweat. They obviously forgot something. The guild leaders immediately exchanged information and regretted not doing this earlier. There were a surprising number of guild members who hadn't been dispatched to participate in this hunting game. It was also very clear why these people would be the winners. They had more people. Who are these people? After the guild leaders carefully added them up, they discovered that these people just happened to belong to their 5 guilds. In addition, they had clearly planned this in advance. They acted in concert with the internal strife between the guilds and killed off all of the deployed hunters in the swamp. Hurry up and send backup. Who still has people left? Arasima quickly shouted. All of his hunters had been killed, so he had no information on the situation. "We still have people," Jiang Yu replied. He was just about to send the list of names to his players and tell them to be careful, when the last survivor of his tyrannical ambition messaged him in sorrow, dead. Soon afterwards, the remnants of Misty Castle, Void Walk, and Blossom Valley couldn't hang on any longer and soon sent reports of their deaths. The hunters dispatched by the 5 guilds all died. This meant they had lost all hope in finding the swamp hunters' whereabouts. The other side clearly wasn't going to have the boss stay in one place for them to find it. "You two are still fighting. The boss has been stolen away." The guild leaders were depressed. Seeing that Samsara and Excellent Dynasty were still fighting, they didn't want those two to feel better about themselves. The boss should have belonged to these two. Now that the boss had been stolen, those two guilds should feel extremely bitter, right? "We're not fighting for the boss. We fight for justice," a very normal member of Samsara replied in a cold voice and continued to fight like mad. "FCK, Samsara's crazy. We won't accompany you." Excellent Dynasty had originally been incited by Samsara. After hearing Samsara speak, their rationale returned. This fight was pointless. As a result, the guild players began picking up any equipment dropped on the ground and went into a retreating formation. Samsara had fought a huge battle with Blue Brook Guild and Excellent Dynasty, and naturally suffered heavy losses. If they actually continued to fight, Excellent Dynasty would probably win. However, they didn't want to continue with such a pointless battle, so they prepared to retreat. The other guilds hoped the conflict would grow larger. It would be great if Samsara and Excellent Dynasty went to war and splattered the entire heavenly domain with dropped equipment. According to convention, such a thing was unlikely to happen, but today Samsara seemed to have gone crazy. Who knew what stupid thing they might do next? Excellent Dynasty originally had the advantage, but decided to retreat after thinking rationally about it. If Samsara still refused to rest, what would the resulting scene be like? Full of expectation, the guild leaders almost forgot about the bitterness of losing the boss. If these two club guilds actually went to war with each other, then losing the boss would have been worth it. Today clearly wasn't their lucky day. Right when they hoped Samsara wouldn't be reasonable, Samsara suddenly became reasonable again. Seeing Excellent Dynasty's retreat, they didn't pursue them and continued to put on an appearance. Excellent Dynasty understood tacitly and didn't bicker. They just picked up their own dropped equipment. Many of Samsara's equipment also dropped, but Excellent Dynasty didn't find it appropriate to pick those up. "Everyone, Excellent Dynasty will take its leave first today. However, I'm going to need an explanation for today's events." Excellent Dynasty finished picking up their items. Ye Xiu gave a cold statement and then left along with his guild members. Explanation. What the FCK is there to explain? The guild leaders felt wronged. They had originally planned on sending players to pursue the boss again, but they didn't feel like doing it anymore. With that proof post, someone might use the opportunity to cause trouble. As the losers, it would be best not to touch the boss. "Isn't it just a swamp hunter Lepu? What's so special about it? We lost. Whoever got the boss can kill it." Herb Garden's Arasima spoke and then left with his players. The other guilds were in the same situation. They said a few words out of formality and gave up on Swamp Hunter Lepu. In the end, only Blue Brook Guild and Samsara remained. Changing Springs and 3 Worlds stood at the head of their respective teams, facing each other, neither side speaking. After a period of silence, Changing Springs spoke. 3 Worlds, you must have had a plan when you decided to do your actions today, no? Oh. 3 Worlds answered calmly, completely different from his previous hot-blooded appearance from before. Deep in Poison Fang swamps, Wei Chen's windward formation led his team in killing Swamp Hunter Lepu. This wild boss wasn't easy to beat. Most guilds needed an entire group to kill one. However, even though Wei Chan had retired many years ago, he hadn't left glory. He wasn't like one of those old antiques who couldn't keep up with the times. With his skill level, killing off the swamp hunter Lepu with his team could be done. If not, he wouldn't have arranged this operation with Ye Xiu. Pushing C, go right. Your FC King blocking the mage's view. Big head, are you a cheerleader? Go up and attack. If you can't, just tank it. Shield attack. Use a shield attack. Are you a turtle who only knows how to hide behind his shell? Wei Chen's leading was quite ruthless. Even though his bros played with him a lot, it was their first time against such a boss. Luckily, Wei Chen was there to control the field. Warlocks were proficient in control skills too. Level 70 was also higher leveled than the wild boss. He might not be able to completely suppress it through his level advantage, but his skills worked effectively, which was exactly what a control mage needed. In addition, they were all playing in an internet cafe so they could look at each other's screens. Wei Chen's shot calling was like a fish back in water. Slowly, the situation stabilized. Go, go, go. Good, attack while pulling him this way. We can't keep staying in the same spot. Formation, stay in formation. Watch the F seeking distance between yourselves. Maintain your position. Wei Chen never stopped talking. He didn't dare be negligent. They could kill the boss, but it wasn't going to be easy. Suddenly, he saw a few shadows slowly creeping up on them from the corner of his eyes. Wei Chen suddenly became nervous. If they encountered any strangers, let alone experts, even a few noobs could ruin everything. But when he saw the players, Wei Chen relaxed. FCK, you scared this senior to death. You could have at least said something. It was Lord Grimm and his team. When Wei Chen saw them, he happily spoke. Everything's been resolved. Yeah, I left 5 people behind to follow behind us from a distance away. If someone pursues us, we'll notice them. Let's hurry. Okay, everyone hurry, Wei Chen roared. Ye Xiu's team joined the battle. Ye Xiu's Lord Grimm was a pitiful level 54. Against a level 65 wild boss, his attacks were worthless, so he didn't really go up and attack. He just showed up and then disappeared into the background. In any case, with Wei Chen there, he didn't need to do any leading, so he went to do other work. With more helpers, the situation stabilized even more. Thinking of materials he would get after killing the boss, Wei Chen became extremely excited. 70%, 60%, 50%. Swamp Hunter Lepu's health continued to decrease. No one came to bother them either. Everything seemed to be going smoothly. At this moment, he suddenly received a message. With the situation stabilized, Wei Chen had some time to reply. He opened it and saw it was from Lord Grimm. Have you killed the boss yet? We're halfway done. What's wrong? Wei Chen immediately became nervous. Lower your damage output, Ye Xiu said. Why? It's good for us. Ye Xiu replied. How is it good for us? Wei Chen asked. I'm fighting for it, Ye Xiu said. What are you talking about? Wei Chen was extremely anxious. A guild has come looking for me. They're willing to pay a high price for this boss. Ye Xiu replied. What, that's a thing? Wei Chen was puzzled. This boss isn't as simple as just materials and equipment. This is a rare opportunity. If we get this type of opportunity again, we'll benefit greatly. Ye Xiu replied. Really? Then I should hurry and get a list out so they can give me all of the items I need. Wei Chen replied. Ye Xiu naturally didn't pay attention to this message. He turned his camera around to look at 2 people, changing springs and 3 worlds 6 paths. You two should hurry. The boss is about to become enraged. If it becomes enraged, it'll be difficult for us to hold back. So what do you think of the list of materials I sent you? Ye Xiu laughed heartily. The King's Avatar Volume 5 Ace Showdown Chapter 540 Chapter 540 Extortion. Seeing Lord Grimm's list of materials, Changing Spring realized how Blue River's helplessness towards Lord Grimm in the 10th server was formed. A god was truly a god. He quickly figured out their weakness. The list of materials that he had received wasn't impossible to accept, but it wasn't easy to accept either. Changing Spring let out a sigh and turned to look at 3 worlds. Samsara Guild Leader, your thoughts? No problem, 3 worlds replied bluntly. Changing Spring could only sigh in his heart. Of course, three worlds would be blunt because for Samsara, they would certainly profit, but for Blue Brook Guild, it was the same as if someone punctured your tire, but there was only one person in the area who could repair it. Don't repair it. If you don't repair it, then you can only abandon your car. What else could you do? The only option was to get ripped off. If Samsara has no problems with it, then we're the same. Changing Spring wasn't happy, but his tone of voice appeared calm. He turned to look at Lord Grimm. We'll send the items immediately. What about your side? No problem, we can wait. Ye Xiu smiled. Didn't he just say it would be very difficult to hold back? Now he's saying we can wait. Changing Spring and Three Worlds rolled their eyes. What else could they do? They could only wait as well. Ye Xiu wasn't going to release the hawk until he saw the hare. He needed to receive his payment first before giving them the goods. It wasn't the same as before. These guilds could easily cheat him. He didn't have the slightest doubt that with the guild's enmity towards him, they would view him in a different light and wouldn't treat him in an honest manner. Old Wei, persevere. Ye Xiu encouraged Wei Chen. How's it going on your side? Wei Chen asked. I've helped you directly get Swamp Hunter Lepu's rotting ash. Ye Xiu said, that's it. If I kill the Swamp Hunter Lepu, rotting ash is practically guaranteed to drop. What else is there? If that's it, then aren't we losing too much? Wei Chen said. Of course not, the rest is for me, Ye Xiu said. FCK, you're not nice at all. I worked so hard and all I get is rotting ash. Hurry up and give me some more materials. If not, I'll immediately kill the boss for you to see. Wei Chen shouted. Okay, I'll try. Ye Xiu said and then turned to look at the two guild leaders. The situation has changed a bit, Ye Xiu said. What? Something's happened to the boss. The two were alarmed. It's like this. I feel like the price I proposed to you two is very fair, but you see, my partner is a very bad person. He's a dishonest fellow. Seeing that you two are in a hurry, he is heartlessly taking advantage of this. Even I feel awfully ashamed to say this, but there's nothing I can do. The boss is in his hands after all. I can only send his list of materials for you two to see. Ye Xiu sent them his list of materials. After hearing Ye Xiu's first few sentences, they could tell he was just blathering. Their faces darkened, however, they didn't act immediately. After taking a look at the list, the two were shocked. Are you joking? The two were relatively blunt guild leaders and directly expressed their thoughts. I agree, Ye Xiu added. This made the two of them were extremely angry because they didn't want to face him right now. They wanted to face this dishonest person. As for whether or not this person actually existed, the two had no clue. Right when they were about to speak, they heard Lord Grimm say, I've contacted the dishonest guy and told him your replies. The dishonest guy asks, aren't you guys the ones joking? We made a deal. Changing Spring said. I want you two to imagine that you have met a despicable and shameless disciple. Take out your limit and fill in his wickedness. If this isn't enough to satisfy his disgraceful self, then it seems like today's win-win cooperation will be destroyed in this dishonest guy's hands. Ye Xiu said, okay. After a long period of silence during which the two might have been discussing with each other, Changing Spring finally spoke up. While replying to the list of materials, he said, this is our limit. Please pass this on to your partner. His shamelessness is something we have never seen before. I feel like it'd be best to complete our cooperation before I send this message on. Ye Xiu said sincerely. The two had no words to say. The two had privately cursed at Ye Xiu hundreds of times already. They felt like he was playing two roles and cheating them, but from the looks of it, maybe the dishonest guy actually existed. Lord Grimm alone was already enough for them in the heavenly domain. Now another evil villain had arrived. How grim did their future look? The two guild leaders deeply felt a type of foreboding in the future. Lord Grimm replied at this moment, congratulations, you two. Through the efforts of both sides, we have finally reached an agreement. The two guild leaders cried. Through the efforts of both sides. You didn't put in any seeking effort. Or did you mean putting in effort to extort us? Hearing this response, The two guild leaders didn't even feel like saying false words out of formality like they usually did towards their competitors. They only spoke coldly. If everything is set, then you can hand the boss over to us now, right? At this point, you're just wasting our time. I'm very sorry. I trust in the honesty of your guilds, but the problem is, think about it. For a despicable and dishonest person, if they don't see the hair, do you think he'll let the boss go? Ye Xiu said. If this keeps dragging on and something happens, who's going to take responsibility? Three Worlds asked. If something happens, the losses will be shared between both sides. Speaking of this, our losses would be worse. We would lose all of the materials on that list, but you too. It's just a level 65 swamp hunter Lepu. You wouldn't feel worse than us, right? Ye Xiu said. The two guild leaders wanted to die. For this guy to actually say something like this, a god truly was far above them. According to you, why should we trade all of those materials for a stupid boss? You're clearly speaking nonsense. Despite coughing blood, the two didn't leave. They could only wait, but what were they waiting for? Were they waiting for their people to hurry up and send the materials? It seems like the delay was because of them. Changing Spring understood now. He completely understood why Blue River would have a no-resistance policy towards Lord Grimm. Ye Xiu, God Ye Xiu. If you only thought of him as a knowledgeable glory player with incredible skill, then you were wrong, very wrong. Changing Spring only hoped that the items would hurry up and arrive on time so that he could resolve this problem. He didn't want to interact with this guy any longer. It would be best if they never had to interact with each other ever again. But was that possible? Last time, it was a struggle in Wilderness Town. This time, it was a robbery in Poison Fang Swamp. This guy clearly wanted to quarrel with their club guilds. Hide? How could he hide? Even if he wanted to hide, Ye Xiu was planning on creating his own team. Changing Spring might want to hide, but he couldn't say it out loud. Out loud, his words would appear relaxed. That guy Ye Xiu is very arrogant. Let's go and crush him. Changing Spring thought of this scenario and felt nauseous. He wanted to vomit. Guild leader, the items are here. Finally, Changing Spring heard a voice. He turned around and saw a member of his guild carrying the items. Samsara's delivery person wasn't any slower. He was about 20 units away from Blue Brook Guild's runner. I have the items. Changing Spring took the materials and said to Lord Grimm. Okay, Lord Grimm replied and sent a trade request. Changing Spring held back his anger and declined the request. Isn't it about time you brought us to the boss? Sure. Once I get the items, we'll go. We'll pay you when we see it. That's not good. It's too easy for you to cheat me, Ye Xiu said. Then how can we trust that once you get the materials you won't just run? Changing Spring asked. Ask Blue River. When have I ever went back on my word? Ye Xiu said. Blue River was the intermediary Changing Spring went to when he wanted to contact Ye Xiu's Lord Grimm. Ye Xiu had said it so Lord Grimm couldn't receive friend requests, so Changing Spring and Three Worlds had no way of contacting him. However, Changing Spring had an urgent matter at hand and needed to contact Lord Grimm, so he found the quickest way to reach Blue River and asked him if he had any solutions. Blue River actually had a solution. He had interacted with Ye Xiu many times. In fact, he helped manage Guild Happy, so he knew how to reach Ye Xiu. Blue River contacted Soft Mist, Steamed Bun Invasion, and Chen Guo's side account. From them, Ye Xiu received messages through Chen Guo's phone and added Changing Spring and Three Worlds as friends. Once they met each other, Changing Spring and Three Worlds wanted to hide their intentions. But who was Ye Xiu? Without needing too much information, just from seeing their arrival, he linked together their circumstances and quickly figured out their true intentions. Then, he used his extortion technique, and the two guild leaders immediately realized they had been seen through. Thus, the transaction took place. They had no way of setting any conditions and could only suffer. They couldn't even ask to see the goods first. We'll trade. The two discussed with each other, and then made the decision. The King's Avatar Volume 5 Ace Showdown.